Yes. Hello, my beautiful friends, and welcome back. I hope that your week was absolutely outstanding. We've got some good business to attend to here today. We're talking about some election fraud shenanigans. The FBI confirmed they went into California, into Skid Row, where all the homeless people admitted that they had engaged in election fraud, were under investigation. So we got the details on that and some other interesting developments as they relate to elections coming out of the office of the DNI. Apparently, there's a White House report that could blow the lid off the election fraud that we saw in prior elections, or maybe it's a nothing burger. Don't really know, but it's not being released at the moment. We'll try to ascertain why. Then we've got some other reports on what's happening in Georgia and the QR code fraud and more election updates all coming up. Then, huge news on the day, Tulsi Gabbard dropped the MOTHERLODE on Anthony Fauci, the guy that was lionized as Saint Fauci. They were doing little dances to him back during the COVID era. And he, of course, got pardoned by Joe Biden. But now with all of this new evidence of actual criminality, lying to Congress and other things, we've got senators who are saying he must be charged. Bring that pardon into court. He can challenge it. It will be found to be invalid, and he can go straight to jail where he belongs. And then lastly, a big one fresh out of the oven, Joe Biden has been trying to cover up that Zwanitzer audio. Remember, Joe Biden gave that interview with Robert Hur, the special counsel, and it was devastating for him and his election chances. But then what that was referencing were prior audio recordings when he sat down with somebody for his little book that he was writing. And he did not want that audio to come out either because it happened a long time ago. And if it's as bad as it sounds, then that might invalidate a lot of their testimony to all of us that Joe Biden was perfectly functional. And maybe that will relate back to these pardons. The guy may have been gone for way longer than anybody even suspected. So we're going to have a great stream together here today. Thank you for joining us and for being here. We've got great business to attend to. Let's just confirm briefly that the tubes are working and that we're coming across loud and clear before we get into the good stuff. And there is some good stuff today. And it's working. Eureka. Let's get to it. Here is where we'll start, courtesy of the FBI. The FBI now confirming an election probe in California. There was a report that FBI agents descended over onto Skid Row, which was the same area we saw in previous episodes. Homeless people admitting that they were paid to vote, meaning that they were in violation of federal law. We pulled up the statute. We took a look at it. We saw that if you are a person who pays somebody, if you give them some monetary incentive or some contribution or something to incentivize them to vote, you're guilty. And the person who is receiving that in order to do the voting, they're guilty too. So we'll dive into this report, but Kash Patel came out and he said, yep, securing our elections is of the utmost priority for this FBI. And if you mess with our elections, we will find you. So the New York Post came down and said, it happened. Went down yesterday in California. You can see agents descended upon the streets of Skid Row. Spencer Pratt commenting about this. We also saw in LA that they have advanced a new effort to allow illegal aliens literally to vote. And so put a pin in that in your brain as we talk about all this. They actually want illegal aliens to vote legally. They say that they are entitled to go vote. They live here. They're residents. They contribute so much to our economy, blah, blah, blah. Meaning, if they did vote, maybe illegally, they wouldn't be too upset about it because they think they're already entitled to do so. So now they're looking around and they're asking questions about that prior case that we talked about. And let's not forget, a woman has already pleaded guilty for this. Kash also reminding us about that, saying somebody's already been charged and she already pleaded guilty. Back in May, a longtime signature collector, guilty. She agreed. She said, yeah, I was paying people to do it. Harmeet Dillon led this one. Her name was Brenda Lee Brown Armstrong, 64, known as Anika, and James O'Keefe and the OMG media crew really blew the lid off that one. She was charged with one felony count of paying another person to register to vote. Can't do that. So when they say there's no election fraud, It's evident. They're even admitting it, and they don't look into it, especially in California. It takes a lot of resources to go investigate crimes. They don't have the effort, the energy, or the willpower to go do it. And so now we see this woman, at least, is one who has already been charged. Hopefully, many more to come. About 20 agents swooped in on the blighted area after homeless people staying there said that they've been bribed with cash, $2, $3. We watched the videos of the homeless people with their bellies hanging out, not looking so hot, saying they came down and gave them a couple of options. You can vote for Karen Bass or you can vote for Nithya Raman. You know who they did not have an option to vote for? Spencer Pratt, clearly. Bribed with cash to sign multiple registration forms, forge signatures, and fill out information for the mayoral and the gubernatorial primaries. California Post looked on, you see some photos here, as these agents were scouring the streets, asking them, hi, were you paid to vote? I'm from the FBI. Hi, I'm from some agency. And are you aware of any others who were also voting? All these people sitting there like, man, do you just have $1 or something? The DOJ would only confirm that they were investigating, quote, a criminal matter. So they were there. Officers conducted up to 50 interviews trying to assemble a case. It marked a major escalation. Now Cash admitting it happened. As we saw, he said, yep, we're securing it, so get ready. The action came a day after the LA City Council moved forward with the proposal introduced by the socialists to allow immigrant non-citizens, aka illegal aliens. And we read the entire actual motion that was submitted. It says non-citizens. There's a lot of nonsense out there on this story and on this topic where they're saying, well, they actually are documented. Could we allow documented non-citizens to vote? And you start to ask yourself, what does documented mean? Because that traditionally means that the federal government knows about them, that they have some lawful status to be here as a permanent resident or here on temporary protected status, which, as we find out, is not temporary at all since the Haitians have been here for like 20 years. But documented, you mean when they go register to vote, now they become documented because you give them the ability to go vote. So they moved it forward 10-5 in order to enable illegal aliens to vote. And we read the motion. It doesn't say lawful non-citizens. It just says non-citizens. It's extremely broad. They're going to have to flesh out the rest of the implementation of this and the process and all the other terms. But it says non-citizens. It's clear as day. So don't let them bait and switch this. Now, it just does not make sense to me that someone who moves to LA for a temporary job has more of a voice than a parent who's been here for decades, raising their children throughout public schools. The FBI probe came after all of the videos were released. Rahman then surged into second place, beating Spencer Pratt after there were statistically anomalous dumps of ballots that were very likely being harvested from all over the place. In one of the clips, a man on Skid Row said he got $4 to commit a federal felony. When asked whether he would have been paid to vote for Rahman, he says, yeah. What about Spencer Pratt? No, wasn't an option. They gave you a choice, but it was only one of the two. He further claimed that he completed a mail-in ballot for Bass, then dropped it in a Dropbox. So Homeland Security Investigations, the other agency there, HSI, they were also there. Officers were dressed in jeans, sweatshirts, and baseball caps. They spoke to locals who appeared to point them in the direction. And we want to backtrace this up the chain. These people committed crimes, no doubt about it. But the people who paid them and organized all of this did that too. The Post confirmed agents were attempting to identify who was either approached or paid to vote. The FBI said, we don't comment on ongoing investigations, but these certainly look like plainclothed agents. Somebody with a tablet right there talking to all the homeless that Karen Bass and Gavin Newsom and all the people who have been in charge in California for years have not fixed. It gets worse every year. So Spencer Pratt commented about this as well, and he said, FBI agents hitting Skid Row today. What do you notice in the background? We are cleaning up LA whether you like it or not. And look at those giant posters back there. Moms for Pratt. But they didn't go vote for him, likely because they didn't have that option. So FBI is on it. They're looking into it. And while this is all happening, they also have efforts literally in LA to divest citizens of their share of the vote. Okay, there's a number of citizens that's finite, like a pie chart. And a certain segment of those people will actually vote in an election. So if you just shove people who shouldn't be in that pie chart, you're making it bigger and you're making that one individual's share of the vote go down while you enfranchise foreign invaders. So it's a mess. And we've been asking about elections here on this channel for years, since 2020, after we saw how rigged the entire event was. And apparently there was a report that was being assembled inside the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. Tulsi Gabbard is on her way out, and Bill Pulte is coming in. He is causing a 5-alarm fire for all of the other senators. Everybody on the Intelligence Committee in the Senate freaking out about this. John Thune, we never saw them work so fast. They were scheduling a confirmation hearing for Bill Pulte like yesterday. And then Trump said, canceled. We're not going to be doing it unless you pass the SAVE Act. Then we'll put this back in motion. But they wanted Pulte out so aggressively that it starts to beg the question, how come? What are they so freaked out about? Why are they so opposed to the SAVE Act? Very likely because they're beneficiaries of the current system, which means the fraudulent system, and they don't want anything to challenge that. Which is why guys like Mike Lee and others have been fighting so hard for this and running into blockades from guys like John Cornyn, who's now out. Guys like, unfortunately, Senator Kennedy, who we learned similarly was part of a dogpile to attack Mike Lee, to say, Mike, stop giving President Trump hope. Stop telling him that we can pass this. We just don't have the vote. And we do. We can get the vote done. Mike Lee has confirmed there are 50 people who are in the Senate who can actually vote on this thing. But for some reason, Reuters got their hands on an exclusive, and they were talking to people inside the White House. And now the White House is going to delay the release of a voting machine study as midterms near. How come? And I can see this both ways. Let's see what you think about it. But according to Reuters, White House officials have for months delayed the release of a U.S. government report that outlines what it describes as significant vulnerabilities in the voting machines. All of this ahead of the November midterms. Reuters got their hands on with 3 sources familiar with this. Now, the report came from the ODNI, formerly led by Tulsi Gabbard, now going to be led by Bill Pulte. And the report concludes that voting machines could be further safeguarded by, for example, updating their software, which they never do. It does not say that vulnerabilities have led to votes flipping, but it examines security gaps and how the machines are used during U.S. elections. And this is curious because I can see, what if they release this report and it shatters the facade of our electoral system? People realize how devastating it is and how problematic everything is. Why would they go vote? What if all of our elections for the last however many cycles are largely rigged, or at least open to being rigged? Way more than we even contemplated. That would shatter faith in the system. And maybe people just eject out. They just say, we're done. No reason to go vote. Why? We're letting non-citizens in LA vote. We're letting illegal aliens vote. No one's checking anything. We know that the states in 2020, many of them were tiny margins, 11,700 votes in Georgia, about the same in Arizona. And we got this universal mail-in balloting. Everybody gets a ballot, harvest ballots. We collect ballots 5 days after the election in Alabama, and so on and so forth. What's the point? We're all just given like a little treat. Oh, you get to go vote and participate in American experiment. Here, you go vote. But it turns out it's nothing. They've been feeding us crap. Maybe it's that. Some White House officials have argued the report could undermine voter confidence, and you don't want to just shatter people getting out to the polls. Others have said that they do not believe the report goes far enough in supporting Trump's claims, Reuters says false claims, that the 2020 election was rigged. It's not false. It was rigged. The CIA rigged it. That's the most unequivocal example of this. The CIA actual CIA contractors like Mike Morrell, former CIA directors like John Brennan, and others orchestrated a CIA operation that was approved by the CIA, that was written with CIA endorsement, and fed it over to Joe Biden for the debate. He then used the 51 laptop letter excuse to immunize Hunter Biden, blamed the Russians for it, and used that as a talking point. Then Joe Biden awarded Anthony Blinken to be the Secretary of State after a job well done for facilitating the fraud. That's rigging. Now, maybe there's not evidence that the machines were hacked by the Chinese or the Iranians or the Venezuelans, but rigging happens in multiple ways. And so these people are liars. It was rigged. The three sources said, now some Democrats said privately that they worried that Gabbard, Tulsi's probe into the voting machines, would be used to push states to use paper ballots, which would then give us a fair chain of custody. We could actually track the votes back to the paper. And remember, in Georgia, they were using QR codes. We're going to come back to that because there's an update there. But in Georgia, you would go to the little ballot marking device, beep, boop, 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 pick your people. It would spit out a QR code that you can't read, no idea what you actually voted for. You take that QR code, go scan it into the counter, and boom, your votes are counted. Do they match what you actually input into the machine? No one knows because it was all encoded. So several court cases failed to prove voter fraud. And again, Reuters is filled with liars. So 99% of those never even reached the merits at all. They were all dismissed. We covered them ad nauseum here on standing challenges or latches challenges. We got no actual litigation that fleshed it out. Sources in this article were granted anonymity to discuss administration deliberations, and Tulsi Gabbard launched an investigation into these voting machines and searched for evidence, but she stepped down today. Bill Pulte's coming in, and Trump said that Pulte now wants to investigate the rigged elections. And we're looking forward to that. Unclear what Pulte's going to do with the report. He's been briefed on efforts by the agencies to investigate flaws in voting machines, including the unreleased reports. Democrats and some analysts also warn of possible interference by the Trump administration. Officials inside the DNI and experts who advise the agencies had meetings with White House officials that the administration begin fixing flaws in late last year, but that requires extensive coordination with the states before the midterms. And again, they don't want anybody to see their voter registration lists. Every time Harmeet Dillon, the DOJ, sues under the color of federal law to do it, they fight it. No lists, no access. Are you maintaining your list? No, we don't have to. Get out of our business. Spokesperson Olivia Coleman for DNI said, well, Tulsi has taken actions within her authority to support Trump's directive to secure our elections. And yes, that includes identifying vulnerabilities in our critical infrastructure. Now, Bill Pulte did not respond to comment on this today, but it's his first day at work, so a little busy. Some of the vulnerabilities detailed in the report, according to Reuters, have long been known to prior administrations, which is curious. So if you know there are vulnerabilities and you don't fix those vulnerabilities, does that mean that maybe you can exploit those vulnerabilities? One senior Biden administration official said, these include machines running on outdated software, or like Jenna Griswold posting the BIOS passwords on the internet and having the ability to connect to the internet, which they swore up and down through their lying faces that could never happen. All of the sources said that they were unaware of any evidence of vote manipulation. Of course, the report is part of the broader effort to investigate potential fraud. Trump signed an executive order as soon as he came in. Under the Constitution, states have authority to govern their elections, we know. Senior officials at the FBI have spoken publicly about these probes. The report, which draws on data from open source and classified intelligence, would be the first to detail the work on the voting machines. It's one of two reports that Tulsi commissioned on voting machine flaws. The other report, which is also unpublished, was written last year by a government contractor called Mojave Research, which studied voting machines that were seized from Puerto Rico. Both reports have been referenced in White House meetings. They're debating whether there's enough evidence to prove that Trump was right that they stole the election from him. Mojave also found no evidence the machines had been hacked. And again, long article, a lot of details. Tulsi has briefed the White House on its findings over the last 6 months, but never got authorization to publish them. And maybe the reason is because there's a nothing burger. Maybe the report says machines are fine, elections are perfect. Rob, you're an idiot. But I doubt it. The report says many states are using outdated systems, the three sources familiar with the matter said. Yeah, they're all outdated. Everything is outdated. They don't do any maintenance at all. It's a gigantic bureaucracy. And you make your money in the gray area, right? You win these things by saying, oh, no, there's no intentionality. It's just the machine malfunctioned and we couldn't get it to work. That's how they stole it from Kerry Lake. Oh, the paper sizes were mistaken. Oops. Sorry, we had mega long lines with everybody sitting out the front of the voting locations in Arizona for hours. The intelligence agency used information from previously issued reports by CISA, the government cyber systems watchdog, that referenced hacking conferences in which the agency found some of the voting machines could actually be attacked through insecure hardware. Yeah. CISA has also said it found no evidence that a foreign adversary interfered in 2020. Yeah, maybe because they were domestic adversaries. How about that? And the agency joined other federal, state, and local officials in declaring the most secure election in American history, which is one of the biggest scam phrases we've ever heard. ODNI and the White House have also not published the Mojave report. Their contract ended. Software and coding vulnerabilities identified in that report led to the company's recommendation that they implement an emergency remediation plan. Weird. Why would their report recommend an emergency remediation plan if there weren't any problems that would force states to immediately update their software systems? Yeah. Two sources said the plan has not been implemented. And now you've got AI. Now you've got these systems like the Anthropic Mythos model that apparently is so devastating that the U.S. federal government has said that it is a national security issue and imposed export controls on those systems. So they had to pull it off the internet. So the reports are out there. Why they're not being released, your guess is as good as mine. Maybe because the whole system might come crashing down. And I think that's more likely than there's no problem at all. The problems are so severe, they can't tell us versus there are no problems at all. We already saw that. We've been covering this for years. There are problems with every single chain of the entire election as we're watching in real time. So Bill Pulte's coming in there now. And he is arriving early and he's planning on firing hundreds of people, which is such good news. Here's the story from CNN. Let me see if I can bypass this. I did not see that earlier. See if we got any details on this. Sometimes they put those up after the fact. But we're not subscribing to CNN. You subscribe to a lot of things, not these jerks. Perfect. So Trump's new acting intel chief, Bill Pulte, arrives early, and now he's eyeing firing hundreds, saying Trump's Bill Pulte showed up a day early on Thursday after asking for a list of every employee in the office so he could assess whether to fire them or not. The sources said Pulte is eyeing to cut hundreds of jobs from the ODNI, and his appearance on Thursday caught the staff off guard, including the outgoing director, Tulsi Gabbard, who was given a brief heads up on the visit. Trump himself said that Pulte was going to be starting his job on Friday. Pulte was there. He met with lawyers and staffers. In his only other briefing with the ODNI last week, Pulte asked staff if he could bring the president's daily briefing to his house or something. And, I mean, he's the ODNI. Pulte also asked about his level of security clearance. CNN reached out for comment. They previously reported that Pulte was announced to lead the IC, but he doesn't have security clearance and he's not sophisticated enough for them. And so he has to go through the Intelligence Committee and get rubber stamped by Tom Cotton. Another source familiar with told CNN that Pulte has repeatedly inquired about his schedule. How's he going to get around? Asking for security. So this is just a dump on Bill Pulte. Like all of this is standard stuff. Obviously, you get a new job. You have to figure out the mechanics. They're like, he's having to figure out the mechanics. That means he's so incompetent. Now Pulte is overseeing 18 intelligence agencies. and he's hunting for evidence of voter fraud that Trump lost. They all have to say it. It makes them feel good about themselves just to put that in there. Even before Thursday, Pulte was eager to start. He called Tulsi last week, told her that he's taken over. And Tulsi now is signing off, and she released the MOTHERLODE against Fauci. So Pulte's also going to remain head of a couple other locations. Man, he could have more time in this role. Trump directed Clayton, who is the newly appointed permanent DNI, who they all love. And Jay Clayton, don't know much about the guy. He's over at the Southern District of New York, which is one of the most notoriously corrupt jurisdictions in all of America, SDNY. It's where Ghislaine Maxwell came through. Maureen Comey was over there, James Comey's daughter. She led the mop-up operation for Ghislaine Maxwell and for Jeffrey Epstein. So we get it. So Clayton comes out of there, also been on all sorts of financial institutions. And, you know, basically the guy is like emerging from deep state. But okay. So Clayton was well received. Everybody, even Democrats, were like, yes, we love this dude. Pressed on the status of Clayton's nomination, John Thune said, I've never been asked to slow down a nomination before. I don't know what's happening here. Well, we want Bill Pulte to have, you know, some time in there. What's the rush? The rush is they're furious. Pulte didn't respond to a request for comment. CNN has requested comment from others. Mike Rounds, a member of the Senate Intelligence Committee, said he does not know what Pulte's priorities will be, and said the goal should be looking past his tenure and getting Clayton in the job permanently as quickly as possible. I've had no interaction with him for months, Rounds said of Pulte. And so the most important thing for us to do is to get Jay in as quickly as possible so that Bill Pulte is not in there. Trump said, well, I don't know. What's the rush? There's no rush. He said Pulte might find out some things about the rigged elections. I think he wants to do it very much. We hope so. For election officials, it reinforced a fear that the undermining of confidence in elections from the Office of the Director of National Intelligence may not stop with Gabbard's departure. Why should we have confidence in rigged elections? Personally, I would want to know. I understand it might be the end of America if we all learn that all of our voting was like, you know, when they say you go to the crosswalk signs and you press the crosswalk button and you're like, oh, it's supposed to do something, but it really doesn't. I think that was a truth. I don't know if it's still true when I was younger. And I would feel, I'm like, is there anything going on in this button? I don't think so. But it's there to make you think that something's changing. You just keep pushing the cross button and then eventually the light changes. You're like, oh, it worked. Whereas it's supposed to count when you actually cast a ballot. But what if it doesn't? And why do we have all of these black mixed mystery boxes of these election machines nobody can peer into? They all swear they're perfect. You ask any questions about it, they call you a conspiracy theorist. Just shut up and push the button. Just put your ballot in there. Everything's going to work out. It might mean that we're all being governed by the people who are running the machines, or the people who are buying the contracts for the machines, or the intelligence agencies that are actually building in back doors to the machines. So Gabbard, of course, is out. And Pulte, they say, has been handpicked to replace her precisely because this person says he embraces the lies and conspiracies while ignoring the evidence. Yeah, well, we've got plenty of evidence that you guys, including the CIA and the FBI, rigged the elections. We have FBI agents who are texting with each other that they're going to prosecute the president. We're going to stop him once he gets the nomination. We're going to prevent him from beating Hillary Clinton. So if they're willing to manufacture crimes, willing to manufacture the intelligence agencies, evidence and lies about Russia collusion and so on, why would they not just go into the machines and just switch a couple ones and zeros around and then get the outcome that they want? Very interesting. So what's happening in Georgia is they're not going to be revising those QR codes anytime soon. Georgia lawmakers, this started today, apparently advanced a bill to delay the voting machine changes until 2028 because they can't figure it out. It's too hard. Georgia lawmakers not fixing the elections for this cycle. They've advanced the bill extending the deadline to remove the QR codes from the ballots all the way to 2028. This is their first official step during the special session the governor called to rectify this problem that's been threatening to destabilize the state's midterm elections. The bill passed out of the Senate Ethics Committee in an 8-4 vote along party lines. A Republican who sponsored the bill said the measure was a result of the compromise and resisted attempts from Democrats in the committee to amend the language. Under current law, the QR codes currently used to count Georgia's ballots must be removed by July 1, weeks from now. The current ballot marking devices were purchased for $107 million from Dominion Voting Systems, and they were used statewide, the first time ever during 2020, when they also used COVID to say everybody needs to vote by mail. Definitely don't go in and cast your ballot because you'll die. So here, mail it in. Just trust us. We'll make sure it happens. And then we'll use QR codes that you can't read to actually count your ballot. Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger told lawmakers in 2025 that updating all of this is going to cost $66 million. We just can't do it. It's too expensive. This is a proposal that resolves some concerns among our election community and allows a roadmap moving forward beyond 2026. Under the new proposal, Georgia would switch to a new voting system ahead of 2028. Republican lawmakers on the committee appeared hopeful that the bill could address the state's current QR code crisis. Georgia residents largely vote using ballot marking devices. As we explained, those rely on QR codes to tally the results. However, the technology has faced pushback from a contingent of conservative activists who say the ballots should be counted based on the text, not put into some algorithm that spits out something that you can't see. So you go in, you cast your vote, it says you voted. I voted. Amazing. But who knows what it says? In 2024, the General Assembly passed a law preventing QR codes from being used to tally the results, but lawmakers then didn't appropriate the funds to make the switch. So the people really have almost no say, right? You elect legislators to go into the legislature and to pass laws. They did that. But then some other people, well, we don't have the money, we're broke, so we have to keep the QR codes to keep our elections rigged. A bill aimed at solving the issue passed out of the House on the final day in 26, but didn't make it across the finish line in the Senate. So Brian Kemp came out. He announced a special session in May, calling lawmakers back to the Capitol, hey, fix these QR codes. He urged them to consider redrawing congressional and state districts as well after the racist maps got evaporated. But Republican leaders in both the House and the Senate backtracked on plans to redistrict, stating that we're waiting to see how some legal cases flesh out. Now, in addition to phasing out the QR codes, the bill also lays the groundwork for the next voting system. A special committee, which will be composed of appointees from both chambers and the governor, will then set standards for a new system. Notably, the bill removes the Secretary of State from exercising authority over this, goes back into the state legislators. The secretary in 27 will be a partner in that, and Brad Raffensperger lost his butt when he was running for higher office. Burns said Raffensperger had failed to act on the QR code issue. Yeah, didn't want to do anything. They can certainly participate in that decision, but at the end of the day, the legislature will control the resources that would be appropriated to acquire any system. Raffensperger did not respond to comment. Democrats also voiced objections that, unlike the measure that passed the House, there's no provision to ensure that we're going to have a seat on this committee. And we want Democrats to have a voice. Among local election officials who face conflicting guidance from state election leaders, the measure came as a relief. They said, we're not going to make this by July 1. We're screwed. So I really do think that a legislative solution is absolutely necessary here to avoid the court system deciding how we conduct elections. And they're going to vote on this weekend on Saturday to see if they can fix their election systems. And it's always so curious. What is so difficult about paper ballots? Why is that so hard to show ID? Well, it's because if you make those institutional reforms, one side will lose. You change rules, and those rules will disadvantage another side. In this case, it's the election fraudsters that do not want to be disadvantaged. So as we see, there is fraud literally rampant in every single facet and crevice of America. Everywhere we look, there's fraud. Except elections. Asterisk. Non-elections, though. Everything's perfect. Homeland Security just came out and said, look at this. American citizens had illegal aliens taking their names and then taking their money. And there are real consequences to this. So we have identity theft that's happening by illegal aliens to the tune of billions of dollars. But for some reason, that's not translating to votes anywhere. It's all perfect. Here's what Homeland said, courtesy of Colin McDonald, the assistant AG for the DOJ Fraud Division.
The charges today allege that they gained access to the buffet of benefits generously given by the American taxpayer for needy Americans. In some cases, the victims of these crimes, the rightful beneficiaries of these funds, could not access benefits they needed. And why? That was because their identities had been stolen and their names had been already used in the programs to steal benefits. In other words, American citizens were boxed out of these programs because illegal aliens took their names to then take their money, or more accurately, your money, the American taxpayers' money. Illegal immigration carries real and substantial costs to American taxpayers and places enormous strain on our public benefits systems. And the further we look, the more fraud we find.
Except in elections, though. Those are fine. Everything's going perfectly fine there, according to the left. And they want to come out and they want to kind of poison the well. They say, and we love her, Sidney Powell and a lot of the crew that was working on this at the outset right after the election occurred in 2020. They were saying, oh, Cesar Chavez hacked the machines, and that's going to be damning evidence, and we're going to get it all. And then that became the measuring post. Then they would say, well, where's your evidence of Cesar Chavez hacking the elections? You go, oh, we don't really have any of that. Oh, so therefore, there's no election fraud. Nothing is rigged. Well, we have the CIA, we have the QR codes, we have broken chain of custodies. They're not even following the procedures in order to open and close the devices appropriately to zero them out, and so on and so forth. There's no monitors. There's duplicate and triplicate ballots. We've got problems galore. But that doesn't count because the only thing that counts is this articulation of some space aliens came down and then rigged the machines. Well, where are the space aliens? What kind of aliens were they? Oh, you don't have any evidence, do you? Well, no court of law found that space aliens came down and actually rigged the elections. So therefore, you're a conspiracy theorist and everything that you argue is now invalid. So all of the other points that we make, they say don't count. So fraud, of course, is rampant. Here's the number: $135 billion stolen, according to this new post by the Inspector General, Anthony De Esposito. And they can see where money goes because there are ledgers. It's way more transparent than our voting is. So they can actually identify these things, which is why we want to go see the list, which is why Harmeet Dillon is suing to get access to those. He says, states ignoring fraud that finances violence. We're coming for you and we're cutting your funding. And we are going to recover this stolen money, just like I hope that we recover our stolen votes. And once again, they're enabling illegal aliens to go vote. And they may only be one part of the problem. It's probably more likely that the voting operations are harvesting legitimate ballots for people who've moved or for people who are dead. Double, triple scanning ballots, not zeroing out the machines. These are essentially process crimes that are happening. But I also know, we've seen illegal aliens charged with voting in elections, and there's an enforcement problem that makes it very difficult, if not impossible, to identify the fraud because of the scale of the resources necessary to go start an investigation, get access to evidence, which is all sealed off because of my privacy rights. You can't go in and identify these things. You have to dig. And then once you find enough evidence, then you have to charge it. There's not enough attorneys to do all of that work. So The money they can identify a lot more easily. Here's this report, courtesy of the Inspector General Anthony de Esposito. Here's what he has to say.
The Trump administration and the Department of Labor are officially putting governors on notice. The American people will no longer tolerate the blatant waste, fraud, and abuse of their hard-earned tax dollars. And neither should any state. We are demanding immediate action to combat fraud, waste, and abuse within the unemployment insurance program. That's why, under President Trump, the Department of Labor is committed to using every lever available to ensure taxpayer money is protected. To date, we've discovered that the state of California owes more than $20 billion to the federal government after years of fraud, improper payments, and mismanagement of its UI system.
$320 million in improper payments from Illinois, and New York, my home state, is losing an estimated $2 million every single day
Wild.
to fraud and improper payments, while posting one of the highest improper payment rates in the nation, more than 20%. But the days of excuses, they're over. States that fail to protect taxpayer dollars and jeopardize benefits intended for hardworking Americans, they should expect consequences. Acting Secretary Sonderling and I will use every available enforcement tool to demand accountability, recover stolen money, and ensure unemployment benefits only go to eligible Americans.
Years of failed oversight, outdated technology, weak identity verification, and lax controls allowed unprecedented fraud to flourish. The Department of Labor is committed to rooting out fraud, enforcing UI eligibility requirements, and protecting American taxpayers.
Nice. Inspirational music. So the states that are non-compliant in multiple domains should all just be cut off. If you harbor illegal aliens and you're a sanctuary city, no federal funds. We're not paying for your Medicare, not paying for your Medicaid, not paying for your reimbursements, not paying for SNAP, not paying for education, not giving you voting funding and resources. You're on your own. We're not even going to give you immigration and customs support at your airports. Good luck to you. You want to openly violate federal law. You're in a soft secessionary state. You can do it on your own. But as it stands, more investigations will be coming. The FBI, as we learn, are now investigating what's going on Skid Row. And Bill Pulte is coming in, much to the consternation of many intelligence Senate Republicans. But there's a report that has been percolating. Hopefully it's released soon so we can actually understand what's going on with our elections. Because if we're not actually voting, if there's something else going on, the whole fiction of democracy, of a constitutional republic, will evaporate. And we need to know that so we can restore it. So we're going to keep our eye on this story. All of the election litigation and coverage will be right here. Thank you for joining and subscribing as we do. Now, speaking of fraud, we've got a big one. And here it is, courtesy of Tulsi. Tulsi Gabbard just dropped the motherlode on Anthony Fauci, the guy who got pardoned for not doing anything wrong. And I say pardon loosely because Joe Biden wrote that with an auto pen, allegedly. But because of the evidence that is insurmountable, that has been building against Dr. Fauci for years now, we have a question about the validity of that pardon. And senators like Rand Paul, are saying we must prosecute him. He can bring his pardon into his criminal prosecution and use it as a defense, and we can validate whether it's accurate or not. And so we're going to get into the Tulsi Gabbard report. We've got all the documents queued up just to see how deep this rabbit hole goes. But Rand said, as we're going through this, let's not forget, Biden's pardon of Fauci is unconstitutionally vague. It covers way too much stuff that nobody can even identify. It covers 10 years of potential crimes, was signed by auto pen without Biden's direct authorization. At least we don't know what that authorization is. We don't have a chain of custody. There's no log. Somebody sends an email to Joe. Joe says, yes, I approve. Somebody auto pens it. Where is that evidence? They've looked. None of it's been released. You can't pardon someone for crimes that are never specified. This should be challenged in court. And we couldn't agree more. And Rand Paul's not the only one saying this. 2 top senators are urging the DOJ to prosecute Fauci despite the Biden fake pardon. One guy, of course, is Rand Paul. And the other is listed here. He said, I think that we could challenge this in court. It's not specific, it's vague, and it doesn't specify the crime. And it's such a large period of time. So I think it could be challenged and it should be challenged. Rand Paul, obviously a longtime critic of Fauci. They got into it all the time. We love those exchanges because Fauci would come out and say, you don't know what you're talking about, Rand. And clearly Rand did, because Fauci was very likely responsible for the death of millions of people across the planet. So Ron Johnson is the other one. He echoed Paul's concerns. He said that he's pretty certain that Fauci funded the terms of research that caused the COVID to happen and wipe out the planet. Anthony Fauci is a bad person, yes, and he ought to be prosecuted, said Ron Johnson, because I believe he did commit crimes. Let's go. How she has long denied wrongdoing and dismissed such criticism in the past. What was that sentence? But Biden nonetheless infamously pardoned Fauci by auto pen, did it at the very last minute. Paul said, was President Biden of sound mind? Did he understand who he was pardoning? Did he participate in it? Did he approve of each of the ones that were signed by auto pen? Probably not. He was definitely not of sound mind based on those her tapes. He's still today running around saying, is my granddaughter here? He's doing weird things at Obama events. Paul described some of the most alarming elements of a detailed timeline that his committee released, accused Fauci of launching a public relations campaign to deflect scrutiny from the fact that he funded the research in China. Talked about this with Just the News, highlighting the timeline from what happened back in January 2022. Fauci was awake 3 a.m. in the morning. He emails a guy called Dr. Robert Kadlec, who oversaw the dangerous research, falsely asserting that the virus originated in animals and, quote, had nothing to do with the lab. Definitely didn't come from us. Fauci also called in old friends within the intelligence community, according to Paul, to mislead them about what was really happening in China. Paul said, Fauci already knows he's going to have to defend this because he outsourced this dangerous research to China. There weren't adequate safety controls, and now he's got to start to spin. And he did it for his own survival. And many of these people got fat and rich off of all of our suffering, lied to us and said, here, take this pharmaceutical. $8 million grants just getting handed out. It's all one big disgusting circle. So Tulsi Gabbard came out and she released just a mother load. Let me share with you one document that I thought was very curious before we jump in. Couple of highlights. This is from an international assessments report. May 27, 2020, we're right in the middle of COVID. People are in the hospital. People are dropping dead. And here's what they write. Redacted China. Conditions present for laboratory modification and release of human-adapted coronavirus in Wuhan in late 2019. First sentence after the redaction. We assess all of the necessary conditions for an accidental release of a laboratory-modified coronavirus. Specifically, a coronavirus adapted to recognize human cell receptors were present at the Chinese Wuhan Institute of Virology in mid to late 2019. All of the necessary conditions. As a result, we place equal weight on the hypothesis that COVID was a result of a lab modification, along with that of a natural outbreak or the release from a laboratory of a naturally occurring virus, redacted. Which means they know what happened. Now, there are some other excerpts here, but let me have Tulsi Gabbard explain some of this. Here's a report, a full detailed scientific analysis on this. And there's a lot inside here. But here was what Tulsi had to say about this in her release. She said, on her final day, thank you, Tulsi, for bringing this to our attention. Today, on my final day as Director of National Intelligence, I'm releasing never-before-seen communications and documents exposing how Dr. Fauci provided millions in U.S. taxpayer dollars to fund dangerous gain-of-function research at the Wuhan lab. worked with politicized elements within the intelligence community to suppress the truth about his actions and to hide the virus's lab leak origins, and then lied to Congress while under oath. That's a crime, and it's time you know the truth. So she gives us a full 5-minute primer on this. Let's listen in.
Before the COVID pandemic, Dr. Fauci, as head of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, provided millions in U.S. taxpayer dollars to fund dangerous gain-of-function research on bat coronaviruses at the Wuhan Institute of Virology, work which is now widely viewed as the source of the unintentional lab leak that sparked the pandemic. Now, in support of President Trump's maximum transparency mandate, today, on my final day as Director of National Intelligence, I'm releasing never-before-seen communications and documents that expose exactly how Fauci worked with politicized career leadership in the intelligence community to suppress the truth about his actions, the virus's lab leak origins, and his role in directing U.S. funding for this dangerous research that caused immeasurable harm and countless lost lives. Now, these documents expose Fauci's direct role in influencing and manipulating IC assessments on COVID-19 and how Fauci lied to Congress in 2024 when under oath he denied knowledge of or participation in discussions with intelligence officials about viral research. We also received testimony from multiple intelligence community whistleblowers who reported retaliation for challenging the intelligence community's manipulation of intelligence on the virus's origins, once again revealing a clear pattern of suppressing dissent, silencing critics, and burying the truth. Dr. Fauci's close relationships with the intelligence community enabled him to assume 3 key roles that shield him from scrutiny. First, Dr. Fauci funded dangerous gain-of-function coronavirus research linked to Big Pharma and their pursuit of universal vaccines worth trillions of dollars. Second, Dr. Fauci was the behind-the-scenes advisor who, alongside his hand-picked so-called experts, pushed the intelligence community to endorse a natural animal origin to hide his dangerous gain-of-function research that he funded using taxpayer dollars, all of this in a deliberate attempt to cover up the truth and shift the blame and attention away from Fauci's own actions. Third, Dr. Fauci became the nation's pandemic pundit, and he publicly pushed lies, disinformation, and censorship using every platform available.
Yep, we got hit with that.
Now, according to hundreds of reviewed emails, which are included in this release, the intelligence community almost always incorporated Fauci's recommendations. He promoted a fraudulent paper whose publication he helped prompt as legitimate information for intelligence community consideration. Senior analysts praised Dr. Fauci not as a policymaker, but as what they called an unbiased guide to the real coronavirus experts, while deliberately ignoring experts who might dissent from Fauci's narratives. Now, Fauci didn't stop there. He blatantly lied to Congress under oath during his 2024 testimony to the House Select Subcommittee on the Coronavirus Pandemic, denying that he ever spoke to any intelligence agency about COVID. Now, the correspondence I'm releasing today directly contradicts his sworn testimony. Now, we received statements from multiple whistleblowers revealing that the intelligence analysts who dared to challenge Dr. Fauci's COVID origin conclusions faced threats of retaliation, marginalization, and many suffered career setbacks. For example, a contractor was terminated just days after coming forward to ODNI as a whistleblower. Another example, those who advocated for the lab leak hypothesis or expressed dissenting views were reminded by their managers that leadership would determine which analysts would be promoted and which would not. The message was clear: go along or be punished. Senior leaders also sought to undermine whistleblowers by removing anonymity, which is required in the whistleblower process, as they made their complaints, and also insisting that their managers or attorneys be present during ODNI meetings where these whistleblowers were coming forward with their testimony, obviously creating an atmosphere of intimidation. The COVID pandemic caused tremendous hardship and pain for millions of our fellow Americans and countless people around the world.
Many are dead.
Now, after years of lies and censorship and cover-ups, the American people deserve transparency, truth, and accountability.
And justice.
The tactics that were used to hide the truth are straight from the deep state playbook. Politicized, self-serving leaders like Dr. Fauci covered up their own wrongdoing and abuses of power, manipulated intelligence, lied to Congress, and undermined a duly elected president by restricting his access to the vital facts he needed to keep the country safe. It's time you know the truth.
Thank you, Tulsi Gabbard. And in addition to all of those things, we need justice. There needs to be repercussion for the people who did this. Millions are dead, over 1 million Americans. Trump was fed a bunch of nonsense that impeded his ability to actually handle this accordingly. And the documents speak for themselves. So a full press release came down. She released a bunch of materials. You heard her explain a lot of it, but trillions of dollars would have been benefited from a universal vaccine. So they're doing funky experiments so that they can create the solution to the problem. Create the problem, then you can investigate the solution, then you'll get rich. Then once it all went bad, he became the guy who was involved in the cover-up. Lying to Congress, retaliation, and more. Let's zoom in on the documents because they gave us, this is the first document that she released. You can see here is the index. There are 4 parts to it, hundreds of pages of documents, and so there will be a lot more to peruse, I'm sure, over time as people digest all of it. But we've got emails, we've got intelligence or international assessment reports, Fauci readout, Wall Street Journal piece, more emails, New York Post, email, Washington Examiner, all listed here. And there was one sequence that I thought was very, very curious. And I think here's a sequence of emails that are back and forth between a bunch of people. So this was one tranche of documents, and a lot of it is still redacted. So again, this is July 19, 2021. Joe Biden now comes in, and they're trying to figure out who to put on the cover-up committee. Blank is blank. Here are possible reviewers for the COVID origins assessment. Okay, so the idea is we got to assemble a group of people to cover this thing up. This person is this person, which I gather makes him some kind of lobbyist, since that firm's sole purpose is to promote the imagery products of its parent company to the US government. Blank is a blank, redacted, redacted. Blank is an interesting idea, this person. Given his background at the CIA, I'll add him to the list, and I'll drop this person, and I'll drop Clapper. I think Clapper is probably too politically hot. James Clapper is the same cover-up guy who was prior DNI, who was working with John Brennan to create the Russia collusion hoax. Same guy who inserted Hillary Clinton's campaign propaganda into the classified annex that they then gave to Barack Obama after Trump won in 2016 to start off all of the Russia collusion hoax investigation. Clapper, in my opinion, is a traitor to America for trying to rig that election. After. Not Fauci. In addition to being a customer, he'll be seen by many as having a conflict. So I could live without formers, but how about this person? How about this? Maybe some CIA types, because we know how honest they are. Not Mike Morell. Mike Morell was the other guy who in 2020 was responsible for helping to complete the 51 laptop letter with Anthony Blinken and again, John Brennan. So another CIA lying hack. They're all too public. Well, these names notwithstanding, the name that did come up the most was Fauci. But we're not clear on how appropriate that would be because he's a customer of the paper. If he's acceptable, we'd include him. And we can bring him out. The intelligence community, and these are more emails, we really don't know who these are coming from. Like everything is redacted. The IC took direction straight from the NIH, National Institutes of Health, you know, the same people that funded the lab, ... A complex web of money and politics influencing analysis. Yeah, that's true. The intelligence got their info from the NIH. The NIH created the problem. Somebody else shared a recently published Nature commentary and an NIH director's blog entry referring to it. So the NIH then references an article. The article is in a magazine called Nature. That's going to say, oh, it came from a wet lab. It came from a market somewhere, a wet market. When in doubt, follow the science. They didn't follow the science at all. They lied to all of us. Here's a long conversation, and one person sends this to somebody else, can't see any of it. Interest in a discussion about gain of function research. Hi there, someone called me today. Blank used to work for the DOE, Department of Energy, and is now a fellow working for this other group. People are talking about this. We had a long conversation about the FBI's something. I said, I don't know if I've ever seen the FBI coming out of the gates with, concerns remain about this reporting. Multiple IC agencies and offices have expressed concerns over this report, so much so that at least 3 have recommended recall. Blank offered a devil's advocate view that a non-expert could poorly describe actual genetic similarities between viruses the way that this report did. I said, well, similarities can occur naturally over time and are not evidence of their own manipulation. They agreed, but left it at, yeah, but it's possible, right? That it could have been engineered, right? Like you're saying it's not possible. It is possible, right? To Blank, the rat virus description definitely seemed off the wall, but this is a non-expert. He made the point that sometimes the idea of an FBI report has been shown to be correct, even if the details sound off. Someone else briefly mentioned something about the suspicious added furin site, which was the idea that the virus was like Frankenstein's monster, right? They took something like the head off another virus and put it on the body of another virus, and you can see that connection. I flagged it. If I had to guess, people are flagging these flashy reports. But it seems like this person just wanted to confirm the IC was aware of the technical oddities. That's one email. And we scroll down. And it just continues on with a bunch of additional emails. This person says, I've been tracking this pretty close in literature. And this is curious because this person definitely does not want it to sound like it came from a lab. Whoever sent this would love to know. When I saw the CC line, CoV, SARS-2, and gain of function research, it got my attention because I'm probably complicit in it. I've been tracking this pretty closely in the literature, and I would advise to set a very high threshold for any gain of function interpretation as the origin, okay? In other words, do not say it was gain of function. It has to meet a very high standard. Not saying it's impossible, but I think Occam's razor is the best guidance here. Yeah, Occam's razor, to me, is that you guys are doing funky stuff in a lab and it leaks because you're idiots. Not that some bat had sex with some rat and we got some weird thing. While clearly the S protein furin cleavage site appears consistent with gain of function modification, there's your Occam's razor there, you jerk. There is precedent, though, for co-circulating COVID strains recombining. Different coronaviruses do co-circulate in hosts, and this amino acid sequence is present in CoVs circulating in other bats that are regionally co-located where this was isolated. Also, a phylogenetic analysis identifies this site is undergoing a high degree of homoplasy. So it's an adaptation hotspot. So lots of room for natural explanations about how this came about. Now, I'm aware of the accumulating evidence that opens the door for Wuhan's gain of function research, and there may be some blank stuff I'm missing. So I'm not saying that they're not guilty of creating this, but I think we need to pin it down hard before we make this assessment. Now, to be honest, I cannot imagine the Chinese not doing this type of research, but an escape something like this would be extraordinary. They weren't doing it exactly. I mean, they were doing it over there, but we were paying for it. Blank is on the fence with this and maybe leaning towards the gain of function explanation, but as an actual trained virologist, he would be the first person I'd ask, and I have. If he goes all in a gain of function, I'd recommend bringing Ralph Barrick in. I think the IC needs to be very thorough with this. Hopefully you'll find my notes helpful. Good luck and stay healthy. And more emails. So you kind of get the flavor of the conversations that are happening. Back and forth. A couple of virologists at State and I reviewed the version. It's been circulating for a month. It's nonsense. The conclusion she draws requires some real misinterpretations of the science and many contradicted by public work. of viral evolution. Here's another one that they've highlighted. Today's COVID meeting discussed IC efforts to understand vaccine progress. As NIC and WMD works to balance our workloads, we welcome your feedback on the frequency of these. Does your department or agency rely on the weekly nature of these meetups to help with turnover? Bunch more redactions, lots of emails back and forth. And so you get the gist of this one. Now, there was another one that I thought was very curious, and it might be in this document. This one is about Daszak. Email from somebody to somebody else, new Daszak video going around. Now, Daszak was the guy who ran EcoHealth Alliance, where they were actually doing the work. He got the grants from Fauci and the NIH, and then they were actually executing the work. Hey guys, just saw this video online. It's from 2016, where Daszak talks to his colleagues about manipulating spike proteins on coronavirus to make them more virulent. Sorry, I can't send the video, but I don't have a common drive. And he says explicitly in that video exactly what they did. So then somebody else, this is an assembly of all the articles. And this is interesting because this goes on for like 50 pages. Somebody is just gathering up all of the reporting, okay, monitoring all of the conversations. You can see The Hill. This guy is a reporter, 5.69 million views. Huge dump of documents, all assembled by one person, it looks like. Near the end of this, right here, Watch Officer Team Number 1, DNI Watch, ODNI, monitoring all the news that's going on out there. More documents come out. They have Zoom meetings. They're sharing articles back and forth, more from Francis Collins. They send a letter to the Intelligence Committee so that you guys know about what's happening here. They draft talking points. Here's this one. Hey, Avril Haines. She is the DNI before Tulsi under Joe Biden. Given everything that's going on, Avril, I'm sure this is the last thing you want to deal with, but as we discussed late last week, we pulled together some draft points that you could use about the whistleblower complaint, about COVID. I know your schedule's a mess, but if you have a minute, let me know. Here's what you can say. I wanted to call to tell you about a whistleblower complaint. The complaint says that there is intelligence contradicting Dr. Fauci's testimony to Congress that there was no gain-of-function research because the whistleblower said there is. DNI Avril would say the acting ICIG could not conclude that the intelligence reporting cited by the complaint contradicted the relevant testimony. So Fauci isn't a liar. And my understanding, based on the conversation my team had with an expert, is that there is a substantial disagreement about what even constitutes gain of function. It's like Clinton. Depends on what the meaning of is. What is it? We don't know. So given the nature of the complaint, I believe we should give it to the intelligence committees in Congress, but I wanted to make sure you were aware about what was happening. So then they're figuring out what to do once the truth comes out, and a bunch of emails in follow-up to that. Then here's another set of documents. What are the major goals of the project? Some other analysis here. And there was one email that I had marked that I'm not finding right now, which is very frustrating to me. That might be down here somewhere. Right here. Okay, I marked it. Here was the last little bit I wanted to cover. This comes out from Alan McDougall, DNI, and Morgan Weir, DNI. COVID origins, Dr. Fauci recommendations. Alan, the article that Dr. Fauci highlighted last week is attached. Same article that Tulsi was explaining to us, he helped to engineer. So he calls all his buddies. Hey, write this article. They write it for him. Then he releases it. See, look at all these smart people who are definitely not me, who had this opinion that I told them to have. Trust them. And the authors whose views he thought were particularly important here. And we remember that article. There were a bunch of other dudes on there. We covered it back at the time. As discussed, it might be worth considering the article and talking with these individuals in connection with the 90-day study. In addition, the COVID report rollout is scheduled to be discussed Friday at the IC Weekly. Please provide any materials you want me to share, Chief of Staff for the Director of National Intelligence. Then we get this. On Friday, June 4th, so-and-so met with the NIAID, and Dr. Fauci was present there to present our analysis on the COVID origins topic, as well as our approach to this question. Fauci shows up to the IC. He says he was particularly interested in the Wuhan Institute of Virology's work on the pangolins. And he asked for specifics on the type of experiments that the Chinese were conducting on the pangolin samples in the fall of 2019. He keyed in on the specifics, right? This is Fauci now engineering the alternative explanation. Oh, well, it probably came from a lab, but I need something else to pin it on. So the pangolins. He keyed in on the specifics. Well, what about these? And he did not appear to be aware of this or that, or this or that. Okay. Had no idea what he was even talking about. So he's like, oh, it could be the pangolins. We're like, no, because of these things that are all redacted. He highlighted the importance of getting samples from the individuals at the Wuhan Institute of Virology who were ill in the fall of 2019. He said, well, it started there. So what happened to them? Which is a good idea. He encouraged the intelligence community to examine this and this redacted. And he wondered aloud whether the US government had formally made this request to China in diplomatic or public health channels. Now, Fauci and CIA experts agreed on the importance of understanding whether this originated from a single or multiple viral lineages. He encouraged the CIA to contact this person and this person and this person about a finding that we are currently evaluating with the CIA and the Biological Sciences Expert Group. He also directed CIA to do something, all redacted. And he also suggested that the intelligence community connect with this person, all three of whom have advocated for features of the virus that they judge to be consistent with a natural origin. Now, this is interesting. Dr. Fauci comes in, and it's like when you're like lying to your mom or something. You're like, no, I mean, I didn't do it. It was definitely my brother. Like he did it because he was there and I was out playing at the playground. And he was definitely there inside the room and he had the scissors and the baseball bat. Because you got him that for his birthday, remember? You remember that, right, Mom? So Fauci's there. He expressed concerns, it's amazing, about Beijing's quick and thorough cleaning of the Huanan seafood market. He said, you know, Beijing may have made a serious epidemiological misstep that could have destroyed key clues as to how the pandemic began. So the Chinese went in, cleaned everything out, so we can't go validate whether it came from there. There's no evidence to determine if that's true or not. He offered his opinion that the Chinese have shown they are better scientists than epidemiologists. In Dr. Fauci's view, it is not surprising that the Chinese have not found evidence of a zoonotic transfer or an intermediate host of the virus because the search for the natural reservoir of the SARS virus took over a decade. And in the case of some strains of the Ebola virus, still haven't been found. So if the virus jumped to humans from an animal, the natural theory, he said it would be like searching for a needle in a haystack. So it's very convenient when your alternative explanation is essentially unavailable. You can't find it. First of all, the Chinese cleaned it out. Well, if it's natural, if it's of natural origin, we can backtrace that, right? No, can't. Why? Well, Chinese cleaned it out. And even if they didn't clean it out, the reason we can't find why it went from this to this to this is because it takes forever. It takes 10 years. Look how long it took us for Ebola. So therefore, you really can't disprove my thesis because there's no evidence to do so. Then which I thought was just amazing. He's just explaining himself away. And then, of course, they blame the Chinese. No one should expect the Chinese Communist Party to cooperate with a real inquiry. And more disappointing is the lack of candor from the American scientists who have conflict of interest. More than a year and a half after Chinese researchers published the draft genome of COVID-19, the world still doesn't know where the virus came from. That's according to the Wall Street Journal. They're sharing that article around. Congress have any idea about the Germans? Bunch of other emails. Leading theories about where this came from. The select subcommittee released a 520-page final report. The report concludes that COVID-19 most likely emerged from a lab in Wuhan, and they criticized the WHO as well as the government's handling of all of this, relief funds, which were ripped off, mask mandates, which did nothing, jab development, which was mandatory, many people forced to get it and suffering consequences. The report also identifies widespread corruption, misinformation, and obstruction of its investigation by the government, by researchers, and by Dr. Anthony Fauci. This guy got so rich, he sold books. People were dancing for him. People had, Fauci like masks and costumes. EcoHealth Alliance and the Biden administration's CDC. Leading theories that led the committee to their conclusions, saying, yeah, the virus possesses biological characteristics that are not actually found in nature because you guys made it in a lab. The data shows that all COVID cases stem from a single introduction into humans, like at a lab. This runs contrary to previous pandemics where there were multiple spillover events. Wuhan is home to China's foremost SARS research lab, which has a long history of conducting gain of function at inadequately created biosafety levels. And the WIV researchers were sick with COVID in the fall of 19, months before COVID was discovered at the wet market, which was all a fake red herring to distract you from the truth. By nearly all measures of science, if there was evidence of a natural origin, it would have already surfaced, but Fauci said, sorry, the Chinese deleted everything. So that's a person who sends that over. And we all knew there are always various pandemics. There's always swine flu or bird flu or Ebola. We're going through Ebola right now. Most of the responses are very similar. COVID was different. It was like a global emergency. We got to see it in the faces of our elected leaders. They looked like ghosts, like they had seen a ghost. So here's one more. Rand Paul said this. So there really was an orchestrated cover-up on this. We also now know that Fauci was visiting the CIA in early 2020. We know that CIA scientists, 7 of them, voted 6-1 to say it came from a lab, and then they were reversed by superiors. It was 6-1, but then our stupid lying government lied to us. Oh, no, it's a wet market. And then they want us to believe that the elections are free and fair and full of integrity, or whatever they lie to us about. We need to know whether Fauci influenced the superiors or perhaps the opposite. Did the CIA influence Fauci? But we also need to know how often he was visiting and what he was there for. Our understanding is that he wasn't recorded on visitor logs, but he was appearing frequently at the CIA. You have to realize that he was not a scientist in charge of a cure for cancer. He was also in charge of a lot of bioweapons money and in charge of a lot of things that had dual use. And they won't reveal any of this to us because it's not our government. They had weekly meetings on dangerous dual-use research concerns and gain of function, and not one item of those meetings has been released to us, not even to a senator, despite us asking for it for over 3 years. So somebody else assembles more of that interview from Rand Paul to Maria Bartiromo. He was right. Audio technical difficulties. You get the whole gist of it. So the documents are released. Fauci's a liar. He covered everything up. He knew where it came from. His excuses are, oh, we can't prove it, that it came from a natural occurring location because there's no evidence there. Very, very convenient, Anthony. So as Rand has been on for a long time, same with Ron Johnson, they now say he should be charged. There is no basis to not bring him to court. If the pardon is valid, fine, it's valid. He'll be able to present evidence of it, and he can confirm that Biden legitimately signed it. They can subpoena Joe Biden. He can come in and explain it. Put Joe Biden on the stand. Joe Biden, you're in a court of law. All right? And you can just ask him to explain what he did. And then, if that happens, Fauci's going to jail. So that'll be great news. Now, there's more from Rand. He said, on her last day, Gabbard drops a bombshell with even more evidence of Fauci's collusion with the politicized intelligence community. This release includes additional documents revealing the truth about the lab leak origins and Fauci's lies to Congress under oath. I've referred Fauci to the DOJ multiple times for criminal prosecution over his web of lies. Thank you, Tulsi. More to come, courtesy of Rand Paul. And why does the CIA not want to tell us the truth? Do they think it's going to cause a societal breakdown? Like, what are the consequences if the American people know about what actually happened? Other than the biggest risk to them is that we consider them to be illegitimate. Okay, if we have truth, then all of their scams are no longer going to be able to be hidden under the dark of night. and their legitimacy crumbles, and then the basis for their existence goes away because they're complicit in all of these efforts. But otherwise, I think we should have known. If this was a bioweapon and Trump came out and said, yeah, this is a bioweapon. I just talked to the CIA. It's a bioweapon. It came from a lab. Fauci engineered the whole thing. So stay home. Put your mask on. We'd be like, holy crap. Okay. Even though we could see the consequences of it in real time, but it would have changed our analysis. But they think of us as peasants who have no self-autonomy or no free thinking or logical reasoning faculties at all. So they have to just treat us like pigs on a pig farm. And a lot of people died because of this. And a lot of people got rich, and they all belong in jail. So here was a report from Fox News. They also ran through all the documents. Here's how they interpreted it.
Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, declassifying documents that she says shed light on Dr. Anthony Fauci's role related to dangerous gain-of-function research and the alleged cover-up of COVID. Brooke Taylor has details.
Hi, Martha. In her final act as the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard releasing these pages that are really hundreds and hundreds of pages of declassified documents, which she says exposes the government's handling of their investigation into where COVID really came from. Well, I was just going through these documents, and they include intelligence assessments, internal emails, whistleblower allegations, and grant documents tied to COVID research in China. Now, Gabbard says the records show U.S. taxpayer dollars funded COVID research involving scientists at the Wuhan lab, which is a key focus of the lab leak debate for years.
Fauci worked with politicized career leadership in the intelligence community to suppress the truth about his actions, the virus's lab leak origins, and his role in directing U.S. funding for this dangerous research that caused immeasurable harm and countless lost lives.
The documents also show government officials and intelligence analysts were seriously examining the possibility of a lab accident much earlier than many Americans realized. One 2020 government assessment concluded the conditions for an accidental release existed in Wuhan before the start of the pandemic. Now, the release also includes whistleblower allegations that intelligence analysts who supported the lab leak theory faced career consequences. Now, one of the most explosive claims out of these documents is that Fauci allegedly lied under oath during his 2024 congressional testimony.
The accusation being circulated that I influenced these scientists to change their minds by bribing them with millions of dollars in grant money is absolutely false and simply preposterous.
And Fox has reached out to Fauci through the Georgetown Global Health Institute. We are still waiting for comment, Martha.
Yeah, and hopefully they can comment after the indictments drop. So Fauci still running free. He ran to Joe Biden in the final hours to get that auto pen pardon. They granted it to him, which is a strange thing to do if you're so innocent, to go demand that you are immunized for all of your prior conduct. But now the documents are out. The truth is slowly dripping, and Fauci is getting buried underneath it all. And so hopefully the DOJ takes the criminal referrals that have been sent by Rand Paul and Ron Johnson and others. All you got to do is indict him. He can defend himself. If the pardon is valid, we'll flesh that out in the court of law. And if it's not, then Americans will get justice for what Fauci and his goons did to all of us, to exploit a pandemic that they caused, to lie to us all about it, to cause a whole generation of kids to lose years of their lives and development, to put our loved ones in the ground, and to inject a bunch of people with something that they should have never needed. So we're going to keep our eye on this until they're all in jail. Thank you for joining and subscribing as we do. Now we've got one more segment, and I think this might be useful in invalidating Joe Biden's pardons. Joe Biden crushed in the audio fight. We now have a new order in the lawsuit that was brought by the Heritage Foundation against Joe Biden, to get the documents. And it's more nuanced than that because they originally sued the DOJ, Joe Biden's DOJ, to get these materials to show just how incompetent Joe Biden was and why every one of his presidential actions, including his presidential pardons of Fauci and others, were made without competency, meaning they're invalid. But then something fun happened. President Trump won, and now he is in charge of the DOJ. So what happened after the DOJ switched hands is they said, we are going to release these audio files, and we're releasing them soon. So then Joe Biden came in. He said, it's not my DOJ anymore. He sued to intervene. The court allowed him to get into the case. And he said, this is going to be very damning to my privacy rights if you release these materials. And if you recall, we do have some audio already. Joe Biden had classified documents at his home and his office in various locations. He didn't get the FBI kicking his front door in. They just kind of slowly and quietly eliminated the documents and then told us all. Karine came out, I found some documents, and it wasn't a big problem. Trump had the FBI kick his house in, go through Melania's drawers and many more things. But Joe, in those audios, sounded like he was basically dead. That was troubling because he was at the time the president when he sat down for that interview. And what we learned in the course of those interviews is that there was a set of prior recordings that Joe Biden said he needed those documents for because he was being interviewed by someone working on his memoirs. These are called the Zwanitzer tapes. Now we want the Zwanitzer tapes. Robert Hur wrote his report referencing the other audio from years before. And in Hur's report, he said Joe sounded dead back then too. So if Joe was gone years ago and he was gone in the Robert Hur hearing tapes and he was gone on the debate stage, was he even a functional president at all? We know the answer. It's no. But here now we have an order from the judge. The tapes are being released and Joe Biden just got blown out. Congratulations to the Heritage Foundation and Mike Howell, who brought this action under FOIA. Long fight and now a big win. They want certain records that Robert Hur went and got as part of his investigation. Now, Joe Biden's DOJ originally withheld the transcripts and the audio, but recently Trump's DOJ reversed course. And they say, we're dropping them out. We're going to give them back to the Heritage and to Mike Howell, and we're going to give them to the Judiciary Committee. Now, Biden intervened. He said, no, don't do that. That's going to be devastating to my legacy, whatever that is. Before the court now is Biden's motion. Biden says, I want an injunction. Stop the DOJ from releasing these audio files. But the judge says, as I will explain here, Joey, the court on your motion rules denied. You're not going to stop us. We're going to release them. And those should be released today at some point. So remember in January 2023, Garland appointed Robert Hur, special counsel, to go investigate and prosecute potential federal crimes for Joe Biden's removal of classified documents. They discovered them all over the place. Penn Biden Center in Wilmington, Delaware, private residence, global engagement areas, and more. Hur gets appointed. They just had a meltdown over Trump's classified files. Joe Biden, when he took these documents, was not president at the time. And among other things in the Hur report, they mentioned that Biden had diminished faculties and a faulty memory, which was very bizarre because he was the president. He also had those exhibited in his interview with his office. Okay, so in recent 2023, Joe Biden sits down to talk. Robert Hur's like, this dude is friggin' gone. But also, he was gone in 2016 and 2017 in his recorded interviews with Mark Zwanitzer, a biographer who helped him write his book called Promise Me, Dad. Hur ultimately declined to prosecute Joe Biden for retention of certain classified documents because the evidence was not sufficient to convict. Why? The evidence was there. He had them. He took them, was not allowed to do that. But it was because Hur said it would be difficult to convince a jury that they should convict Biden, by then a former president well into his 80s, of a serious felony that requires a mental state of willfulness because he didn't do it willingly. He didn't know what he was doing. He's just walking out with documents. You think this is just an ice cream? No, it's a classified document, Joe. You can't take that with you. I want it. Okay, take it. In March 2024, Joe Biden, still the president, the Heritage Foundation and its employee Mike Howell, shout out, filed this FOIA seeking all records that were relied upon by her. Her says, guy's gone, his brain has no willfulness to it, so we can't charge him. It was reliant on Zwanitzer. Now, as relevant here, those passages included lines in which the report referred back to Biden's conversations with Zwanitzer. So Her listened to these things, and he said they were painfully slow. Joe's talking to the biographer. He says, Mr. Biden is struggling to remember certain events, and he's straining at times to read and relay his own notebook entries. And this is 16 and 17. They ran him again. After he was already gone, they tried to run him again. He could still be the president. After narrowing the issues and processing the relevant materials, the department then withheld the Zwanitzer audio tapes and the majority of the transcripts. They said, sorry, it's all private. In November 24, they moved for summary judgment. The plaintiffs moved for summary judgment. So they were litigating this back before Trump won. The court stayed proceedings in September 25 to allow them to settle this out. And then in an entry, the department, Trump's DOJ, represented that it would review its withholdings. Now, the department from Trump no longer seeks to withhold these audio files. In May 8, in a filing, the DOJ reported that we're going to release these things. We're going to redact certain things, but we're giving them over to Heritage. We're giving them to the Judiciary Committee, and enjoy. They also said if Biden intervened, we would pause. Biden did intervene. He came in. Then Biden moved for an injunction. He said, my privacy rights, don't release it. He says the department's decision to disclose these audios violates the APA. It's arbitrary, capricious, and it's an abuse of discretion, and you can't do that. So the judge says, all right, listen, you're asking for an injunction. That's an extraordinary remedy. You have to show 4 factors. That you're, 1, going to win. There will be irreparable harm if we don't grant your request. We have to balance the equities, and it has to be in the public interest to grant your injunction. So here's what he says. In total, the judge out of D.C., Biden is unlikely to show that the DOJ's decision to disclose these audios is arbitrary at all. He says, first of all, as a threshold matter, Biden is trying to do a reverse FOIA. He's saying that essentially privacy is important and it's about agency discretion. And you can enforce the Privacy Act through the APA, lots of laws and rules here. But here, the Privacy Act's remedies speaks only of monetary damages. Okay, if there's a willful disclosure, you get money. Injunctions to prevent the disclosure, that's not here. That's not in here. Those provisions do not offer the declaratory and injunctive relief against the disclosure that he seeks, nor do they explicitly forbid that relief. So privacy says money damages for the harm of the relief, but you can't use the Privacy Act to actually go secure an injunction. So, since it's not in the law, the court thus concludes that the Act's enumerated remedies are not the kind that are going to oust us of jurisdiction. Under the APA, we have to follow the rules there. The Act's silence as to other remedies don't give you any powers to do that here. And so I can't grant you this, literally based on the law. Citing Supreme Court cases and other things. And unlike the Privacy Act, FOIA contains no meaningful standard against which to assess this. The department's decision to invoke this is theirs. The plain text of FOIA does not require the government to invoke every applicable exemption. All it says is that it's their obligation to make available public information. Supreme Court ruled on this too, and their logic holds. Because the Trump DOJ is under no affirmative duty to withhold information that you're seeking, they don't have to do this. Its determination that these exemptions do not apply is literally their discretion under U.S. code. there are no other constraints on this disclosure. Now, this point is ultimately academic because, as discussed below, the legality of disclosure here turns on whether they abused their discretion, and they didn't. Now, because Biden can press his privacy claim through the APA, the question is whether this was an arbitrary, capricious, or abusive decision. The parties don't dispute the Privacy Act applies, and it would accordingly prohibit materials according to certain enumerated exceptions. You could release things with certain exceptions. And so the DOJ, their initial answer to the question of whether what can be released or not is as follows. The department found that Biden's reduced privacy interests are outweighed because of the significant public interest in the disclosure of the materials. Biden says, no, this is a new position. My department said, don't release these. Now you're saying to release them. He said that they're just making an irrational decision to reverse themselves. Judge says that's not true. There's more here. Here, the department offers another declaration. A guy called Peter Wynn reported this. He wrote a declaration into the court. He said, well, it's not just arbitrary. We have gone back and forth over redactions. There's a whole decision-making process that we got to on this. That affidavit alone does not make an administrative record, but he also explained that the grounds for disclosure were already communicated to Biden. He sent lawyers emails about this. And he explained that her public and explicit reliance on these materials, like her referenced it, that's why we're releasing it. It's not because we're attacking you. It's not arbitrary. It's not an abuse. Her report referenced them. So that increases the public interest in the need of those items. And public would lack access to a complete record if we don't have these things. Hers express reliance on the audio and the transcripts dramatically increases the public interest. And in other words, in the face of a potential conflict of interest, public access to these materials becomes necessary to show whether in the face of a conflict of interest, her pulled his punches. Did her bury these things in order to protect Joe in the upcoming election? He also said the department had considered the privacy interests, and we know that they don't disappear, but we think we do need to produce some audio after making redactions. Stating the department's redactions reflect our analysis. We've also gotten Biden's lawyers' input in these things. And so we'll redact some things that are actually private, and we're not going to redact other things. Like maybe some things about third-party public figures may be redacted. The court also looks at emails back and forth. His declaration is consistent with the justification that's advanced in that email to supplement the record based on the final report. And so the court will consider his email and his declaration in the record. And second, on the record, the department's disclosure decision does not appear to be arbitrary at all. It's not capricious. It's not an abuse of discretion in any way. They determined that reduced privacy interests are outweighed by the significant public interest in this document, in these files. They also exercised their discretion in weighing the factors that underlie the actual exemptions under FOIA. And when they make fact-dependent, context-specific, policy-laden choices in measuring and weighing these things out, privacy versus interest of the public, that's what the law says they're allowed to do. And the change in position here was obvious. Why did Joe Biden keep it buried, but Trump not? The department once withheld these documents. Now it seeks to release them. How come? The department said, well, we just reassessed it. We provided them notice. We said we think it should be disclosed. They also identified reasons for its new position. They say Biden's privacy interests have now waned. We've made extensive redactions. He's no longer the president. And it's now going to supplement and complete the record. So that decision was reasonable under the deferential standard. He says, let's start with Biden's privacy interests. In negotiations with Biden's lawyers, the department made redactions where it determined the privacy interest of the president and other third parties were overriding of the public interests. Explaining, as important public figures, the privacy interests of the president are evaluated differently Even in the Hur report, redactions were not made where the department found no serious harm to their interests. Also did not redact content if it was already public, if it was cited in the Hur report or more, even if it was cited in Biden's memoir. So the result is that information about the Biden family and any family health issues has been fully redacted. Information about third parties who are not public figures has also been redacted. National security information has also been redacted. Anything covered by privilege has been redacted. But Biden says, my privacy is tremendous. Because portions of audio recordings remaining at issue took place in the context of broader conversations. They were highly personal. Biden says, we were talking about the death of my son. But the department also, he says, is emphasizing how his voice sounded throughout those conversations. The voice alone and the tonality and the weakness and failing voice also implicates substantial privacy rights. The court agrees that, yeah, you do have some privacy rights, but the judge says, I reviewed these materials in camera, and I find that Biden's privacy arguments largely overlook the department's recent redactions and reasoning. After the latest rounds of redactions, the materials contain no mention of highly sensitive topics. They don't talk about illness. They don't talk about death. They don't mention any non-public persons at all, including his family. The court's in-camera review of the materials, including a copy of the redactions, shows the department made substantial redactions to the audio and the transcripts. The remaining materials largely contain Biden's discussions of foreign policy, including his references to what may have been classified material and his decision to run for president not to run for president in 2016 because his brain was gone. He insists, though, even if the department teased apart and separated it out, personal and political, the fact that these conversations included intimate discussions of his family life illustrate their private nature. But as noted, Biden and Zwanitzer covered a number of topics, not all of which were personal. And while Biden's discussion of certain topics and other public figures could be considered sensitive, the department reasoned that Biden's privacy interests are diminished by the report's description, and he published it in his memoir. The book got published. The book contains similar material as the interviews. And although Biden's privacy interest in the sound of his voice is legitimate, the department explained that was already diminished. Robert Hur wrote about that in the public report, talked about his tone, talked about the sound of certain statements, saying that his conversations are often painfully slow. Biden struggled to remember events, strained at times to read his own notebook entries. And they didn't redact that from the report. So in all, the department offered a rational explanation for its conclusion that his privacy interests are greatly reduced. Now, the public does have an interest. Let's turn to that. The curated set of Zwanitzer materials constituted both the primary evidence of the 2007 wrongful disclosures, as well as the primary basis for his decision to decline prosecution of Joe Biden. Hur relied on these things to make his decision so that he escaped the fate that Trump had. The department explained the integrity of this investigation of Robert Hur constitutes a paramount interest of public importance, and Garland's decision to release the report creates the need for the remainder of the report. DOJ elaborating that Biden had heightened public interest in the full record. And as to the audio, the department also explained, yeah, Robert Hur relied on the tone. And he had significant limitations at the time that he spoke to him in 2017, saying his conversations are painfully slow. Audio and transcripts are not only the principal evidence, but they support that he did not do this willfully beyond a reasonable doubt. And Hur explicitly relied on this in his public report to explain why he didn't prosecute Joe Biden. Biden's other arguments are also unavailing. He says that any light that might be shed on the counsel's investigation by public disclosure is de minimis. It doesn't matter. You don't need it. Saying it's not going to add any flavor to the conversation. He also quibbles with the department's reading of the two cases in an email exchange. And he takes issue with another citation to another case about the fact that these do get released, like in other matters. Now, to the extent that Biden contests evidentiary requirements, he ignores the DC Circuit's more recent findings. And in sum, the department's reading of the case law does not render its balancing test, balancing Biden's privacy versus public interest, arbitrary and capricious. They literally are following the law step by step. Now, finally, judge says, Biden's general allegations of political motivations also do not vitiate the department's reasonableness in weighing these things. Biden says a change in the administration does not give the DOJ license to make decisions motivated by Trump's animosity towards him. He says striking alignment between officials and the heritage plaintiffs, they're all targeting me. But judge writes, a court may not reject an agency's stated reasons simply because the agency has other reasons. If this set of reasons are good, that's the threshold. Biden notes this doctrine in a footnote, but doesn't make any arguments about that. No justifications for showing bad faith or anything. So in all, Biden is not going to win. He has not made a clear showing the DOJ abused its discretion. They say Biden's privacy rights have been reduced. Public really needs these things. It's not arbitrary and capricious at all. The court emphasizes that its evaluation is unique, though. First, this case involves an unusually strong public interest in the release of these materials. In particular, while serving in the position of special counsel, Hur prepared a report detailing evidence that a then-sitting president had disclosed classified information to his biographer. Hur's report explicitly relied on the materials. Garland released the report to the public, and there's immense interest in this, especially in Biden's mental state and the decision not to prosecute him. So these are unparalleled circumstances. This creates a high degree of public interest in the materials. This resulted in no criminal charges while Trump was being simultaneously prosecuted. As the DOJ itself acknowledges, not all evidence acquired in connection with this is publicly disclosable. But this case does present a confluence of significant public disclosures and prosecutorial decision-making for a high-profile figure, all considered under the abuse of discretion standard, which did not constitute abuse. And privacy interest in this case, though substantial, are also mitigated. A lot of redactions. I reviewed all the things. It contains no information about Biden's family or private people. They did not abuse their discretion in making these redactions, and so Biden's going to lose. Biden will not be irreparably harmed. In this matter, the severity of his irreparable injury is less clear. Biden offers little in the way of specifics. What type of harm are you going to have, Joe? Especially in light of the related information in the Hur report already being released, his deposition already released. The court generally is reluctant to find general harms to personal reputation as being a justification for non-disclosure. And if there are damages, then he can file something under the Privacy Act, private right of action for actual damages that he suffers. So accordingly, the court finds that absent a preliminary injunction, Biden is likely to suffer irreparable injuries from the disclosure, but to the extent of the DC Circuit's sliding scale approach works, the harms are not so strong that they outweigh the release. And so finally, we have to talk about the public benefit and balancing the equities. Biden has not identified any public harm that would arise without an injunction. He has diminished privacy rights. It's all outweighed by the public interest in releasing these things. And so, for the foregoing reasons, Joe Biden and his motion to keep the cover-up underway is denied. A separate order will now accompany this, signed by Judge Dabney. I was saying he, but it's a Dabney, so it's a she. United States District Court Judge. Those audios will be released to Heritage and to Mike Howell. Huge victories for them. Not just going over to Congress, so I would imagine as soon as those files get delivered, they'll be posting them. And this I think, is very significant, because if Joe Biden was that gone in 16, 17, that means that her diminishment that we heard back in 23, 24 had already existed at the start of his presidency. Joe Biden was basically a walking puppet that had no idea where he was or what he was doing for years. That's why he didn't run in 16. He was the heir apparent. Obama could have said, Joe Biden's the VP. He can be great. They all knew this dude was gone. But they needed a figurehead in 2020. The rest of the candidates were terrible. Like Joe Biden's former vice president. He's great. COVID gave him an excuse to keep Joe Biden buried in the gutter. Didn't have to do or say anything. And then they rigged the election, installed him, and he was a figurehead the entire time. So hopefully this goes to his mental capacity for all of his executive orders, all of the bills he signed, all of the pardons that he so-called ratified with the auto pen. And we can start to unwind that horrific 4 years of American devastation. We'll see if this can be parlayed over into Fauci and into the other January 6ers who all got pardoned. All of the J6 committee members all got pardoned for doing nothing. Yeah, very curious. The only one that may survive scrutiny is Hunter Biden's, because he actually signed that one. So we're going to keep our eye on this one. Once again, congrats to the Heritage Foundation, to Mike Howell and the crew at Oversight Project, who have scored a big victory. Joe Biden blown out of the water on this one. We'll wait for those audios to drop, and we'll enjoy. Thank you for joining and subscribing as we do. All right, friends, happy Friday. Thank you for joining us. If you're just getting here, we had a great stream together. We talked about some election fraud probes that are now percolating out there in California. We had 20 to 50 FBI HSI agents who were on the scene over there in Skid Row, asking questions, probing the fraudsters. We saw Spencer Pratt had some comments on that. DOJ obviously has got a guilty plea. White House has some major report on the voting machines that they're not releasing yet. We contemplated why that may be. Bill Pulte's coming in. They're very nervous about that. Georgia is delaying the QR code reforms in their elections all the way until 2028. Isn't that something? We got more fraud all over the place, except in elections, though. Billions of dollars being stolen. The new DOJ is looking into it. Then Tulsi Gabbard dropped the motherlode on Dr. so-called Anthony Fauci. Rand Paul, Ron Johnson saying, we need to charge this guy. Bring a criminal complaint, indict him, and he can then present his pardon in the criminal process. That's all we need. We saw some of the documents. We listened to Tulsi explain it all up for us, read through what I thought was one of the key moments where Fauci comes in and he's like, well, the evidence is deleted. It's definitely natural. Do you have any evidence? No, it's gone. Okay. How did it go away? The Chinese did it. But it definitely was natural. Okay. So a lot of emails sent back and forth, went through some of them, hundreds of pages of documents. We know what they did. We all lived through it. Then we talked about Joe Biden getting obliterated, and those audio recordings will be released. Should be very good to see. But now, my friends, it is time to hear from you. Let's see what you say about all of this and more. Happy Friday. Hopefully your week has been amazing and outstanding. And if you're heading on out of here, thanks for subscribing before you leave, and have a tremendous weekend. We got some donos. What a lovely day. Oh, it's Fauci's head filled in a vat of Pfizer fluid. I'm science. I'm the science. Believe me, follow the me. I'm the science. That guy, man, was a real piece of work. Hey, this old guy. One of the most valuable things we have is our ability to cast our vote, unless you were homeless when it's only worth $2 or $3. $2 to $3. That's it. It's basically everything, right? It's like the manifestation of all of your Americanness gets articulated right into this vote. It's like the whole point of self-governance. It's the way we self-govern. is to go vote, and they're like, here, illegal aliens, have some. What does it mean to even be a citizen? Why would you even care? What does it matter? We talked a lot about that segment this morning, too, on the members only stream, about how they're establishing a beachhead. You give them city council meetings, school board meetings. You can vote in those. Slow march across the board. Then it expands. Well, county meetings, too, and why not? And why not for utilities? And slowly expands out. Then they are voting for president. Then they elect themselves the president, and our country's gone. Milo phone bill. I'm a legal immigrant to the U.S. on LPR, lawful permanent resident visa, and I had to go through a lot of red tape to become a naturalized U.S. citizen so that I can vote. Thank you for doing it legally, Milo phone bill. L.A. gives voting rights to non-citizens. What's the incentive to get a green card and eventually become a citizen? Nothing. I mean, what's the real point? You apparently steal people's IDs, steal hundreds of billions of dollars. Don't get prosecuted for anything. Get stopped by the FBI for trafficking humans. They let you go. They already get work permits. A green card gives you lawful permanent residency, permission to work, and you still retain your home country's citizenship, except you can't vote. Yeah, then you have kids, and then your kids are citizens. Then your kids will become voting members of the American body politique, and then they'll vote for your benefits or amnesty in the future. It's not even America if we don't have a firm line on citizenship. Thank you, Milo phone bill, for doing it right. We appreciate you. Rob, did you say Senator John Kennedy said we don't have the votes for the Save America Act, or did I hear that incorrectly? Please let me know. Yeah, we talked about that yesterday on the show, Rob. So John Kennedy was apparently part of I think they called it a pile-on. Let me see if I can just find the source real quickly. Pile on, it's not showing up. Let me add a little hyphen there. But we talked about it yesterday. There was a tweet about that, which I'm not finding right now. Yeah, anyways, he was dogpiling on Mike Lee, saying, Mike Lee, stop giving Trump hope that we can pass the SAVE Act. Let me put in Kennedy's name. Yeah, here it is. Right here. GOP senators went after Senator Mike Lee during the closed-door lunch meeting today over his push for the Save America Act in what one source described as a pile-on. Since Cornyn and Kennedy challenged Lee about his strategy and complained that Trump is being led to believe it's possible for the Senate to pass this, leading to Republicans attacking each other and Trump undermining his own agenda. So Kennedy dunking on Mike Lee, saying, Mike Lee, stop giving him false hope. This guy is a senior congressional reporter covering the Senate for Punchbowl News, so he's credible. Yeah, disappointing, isn't it? Michelle, wasn't Maduro involved in a lot of the election fraud? Yeah, maybe. And I think it was Maduro's director of intelligence, like their version of the CIA. They got him first before they got Maduro. So, yeah, maybe. I bet he is working with the feds and sharing where to look and the people involved. Yeah, I hope you're right about that. They got his CIA guy first, and then they picked him up. So hopefully both are spilling their guts. Thank you, Michelle, for being a membo. Thank you for the dono. Jonah Finn, everyone forgets registered voters who never, ever do. Everyone forgets registered voters who never, ever do. Thank you, Jonah Finn, for the membo and for the dono. Happy Friday. Milo phone bill. Rob, I'm an engineer, not a lawyer or attorney. Is an auto pen signature generally legally binding? I've digitally signed documents before, but I authorized that digital signature. Did Biden actually authorize every single one of those thousands of pardons? Did he spend more than 5 minutes on each of these pardons? Probably not. Yeah, I think you kind of nailed it. Yes, they can be valid, right? A lot of presidents have and do use them. The question is about what you actually said. Is it sourcing from Joe Biden's intent? Were these staffers who just signed these on Joe's behalf? He had no idea what they were or how it was being contemplated. We looked into it a little bit. I mean, there's really no paper trail. There's really no record. You know, when you legally sign a document, like it goes to your email, you own that. So that's yours. Then you sign it, it encodes your IP address. Then you can see a chain of custody, like in DocuSign. Opened, signed, returned, goes to the counterparty, opened, signed, returned. You can track it all. So you can connect it to intent. But with Joe, nobody really knows. And even if it did kind of nominally go to him, did he have the mental capacity? It's like, what if you sign a will, like you're dying, you sign all of your inheritance over to somebody else. Somebody walks in, hey, grandma, it's your long lost grandson. Remember how much you love me? Here, sign me over your entire trust fund. She's like, oh, hi, Rob, I love you. Yeah, she's like doped up on fentanyl, dying in the hospital, signs away her entire life worth. You're like, perfect. Did she have the capacity to sign that away? Probably not. So that signature, even if it came from her hand, is invalid, right? Is what the other grandkids would say. So it's about capacity. It's about chain of custody. So, you know, a lot of it, as always, is it depends. And that's what we're trying to get to the bottom to. But our point is, Fauci can defend the signature, and he can have the burden of validating its accuracy in court. Rob, what is your opinion about Fauci? Treasonous? Yes. Murderous? Yes, or both? Yes, both. In my opinion, both. And I'd sure enjoy seeing ultimate penalties. Pretty sickening what he apparently did. Yeah, it is sickening. And the fact that these people can just come on the cameras and just like look at you in the camera and say, I'm looking out for you. I'm a good person. I'm taking care of you. Trust the science. I'm righteous and honorable. And the media was like salivating over this dude. That's how you knew he was like bad. Is because, you know, your trust the science. What are you, like a troglodyte kind of Neanderthal who doesn't believe in science? What kind of a person are you? Well, the media lost a lot of credibility. So did the science community, because it was just propaganda for their pharmaceutical companies and to immunize themselves against criminal penalties. Sharpie Guy. Yes, we'll share the baby shower links. 100% Sharpie Guy. I'll drop it over on the locals comments. King of Biltong, what's up? Turn up the flavor, King of Biltong with Peri Peri Biltong. It's mild heat, it's big flavor, it's got 50% protein to keep you going. Try the full Peri Peri range, BiltongUSA.com, code Robert if you'd like to get some. That way you'll save 10% off. Hey, Wandering Gamsley. I watched CBS when they said it was a lab leak. Then they mocked the idea the next day. I had an epiphany and my nose in politics ever since. Cheers. Man, cheers to you, Wandering. Yeah, and I think we all saw that. Like, we all got jerked around. Remember, they were even saying, don't put on a mask. Okay, don't put on a mask. You don't need it. It's keep the PPE for the people who need it. Then they came out, put your mask on. Cloth mask will be great. Like, what? They did it with the jab, too. Kamala and Joe Biden were saying, I'm not taking Trump's shot. Are you crazy? He's like racing that thing through. Why would I take that? That's insane. I'll never take it. Then they win the election. They immediately reverse. They're like, yep, jab me up. It was all propaganda, man. It was a mass psychosis. It was a mass frenzy, and we were all like victims of it. And it was very stressful. Broke a lot of people. A lot of people are still broken as a result. And I'm furious about it. Hey, Sassy Gemini, hanger on here. What's up, Sassy? I need closure. You know, I can't let go of the burning question from someone this morning. I feel like our host, who, me, missed the big picture about the question. What is this called? Or what do you call this jar opener? The question was about a similar item, no shade, just trying to clarify the actual question. I think it was about the O-ring. So we had a conversation about mason jars this morning. This, I don't know what that is. That's a jar opener, I think is what, so that's a jar opener is what that looks like. So that looks like a rubber, it says kitchen utensils and gadgets, jar openers. I don't think that's what she was asking about, Sassy. That was from this morning's conversation where we were talking about, well, sorry for all the scrolling here. I don't think it was here. I think it was in the comment section. But I think what we were doing was, this morning we were talking about mason jars, slap chops, ShamWows, and gaskets for mason jars. So that looks like a jar opener. I think one of the questions was, what is the round thing that is connected to the jars? I don't know. I think the question was for Mom of Many, so she'd have to clarify. Mom of Many, if you're out there, let us know what the details are. But that looks like a jar opener. So like jars are kind of slippery, so you get a rubber kind of grip tape, open it that way. Jar gripper. We also looked up jar opener, which is like the bigger things. Looks like almost like a set of pliers around it. But you also have the gasket that goes inside the mason jars to make the seal, so that it's not, that's not a seal. Looks like a grip tape on the top, which I haven't seen before, which seems to me to be less effective than the actual, wrenches that you can use. But I've never seen those. Definitely gaskets we've seen. Thank you for the clarity, Sassy. I'm not sure. We got to ask Mama Many. Andrea, Rob, I think that they are afraid of worldwide reprisal. Not only did they fund gain of function, but they released the so-called jabs around the world. Do you think other countries could prosecute Fauci? I think so. Yeah, why not? Yeah, why not? I think that he probably has I don't know their laws, obviously, but he probably has a nexus to their governance. If he went over there and advocated for something or a contract facility, like China probably could, because he was over there funding research in their country, but, are they going to prosecute him? I don't know. They were complicit in it. But did he go to Europe and maybe the biolabs in Ukraine? Maybe he had something to do with that. I don't know. But didn't the Indians, people prosecuted, I think, Bill Gates, right? Like Bill Gates is like a criminal in like India or something because of his jabs. Like they handed out a bunch of jabs, bunch of people got permanently damaged, and he's in big trouble. So I would imagine, yes, goofy for Jesus. Hey, is the pool peeling? It might be. I'm not sure. I think we're going to go check it out tomorrow or Sunday. But it looks like people might be digging it up. I saw a report that somebody got arrested for digging up some of the pool stuff. I want to see if I can find those documents. I think it just happened this afternoon. Somebody was out there. There was an 8647 in the pool. And we got freaking lunatics that we're dealing with. Total freaking lunatics that are like engraving like psychopaths, like 8647 in the bottom of the pool in the grass. They're mentally deranged, cutting fuel lines, poisoning nature, lunatics. And I did get a haircut today, yeah. It's pretty short. Summer season, baby. We like it. Thank you for saying something. Hey, big hugs. Thank you, Goofy for Jesus. Man, we love Jesus too. We love you, Goofy. Thanks for being Goofy for Jesus. This old guy, why would the U.S. government fund any kind of viral research in a lab located and controlled in another country, particularly when that country is not counted among countries we consider to be allies? Seems a little bit counterintuitive. I couldn't agree more. And why would you put them right on the border, like in Ukraine? Tulsi released the other report, like 30 different labs in Ukraine. Why would they put them there? So the Russians could march in and take them over? Like whatever. Everybody knows, okay, if you're going to be an evil mastermind, you have to go find an island with a volcano on it. And you build your biolabs on an island with a volcano in it. With a mountain that looks like a skull. With lava flowing out. That's where it should be. If we're going to do any funky bioweapons testing, go put it on Epstein's Island or something. Thank you, this old guy. It seems ridiculous. Like, why would you go to China? Why are you doing your bio testing in China, where everything is under the purview of the CCP? Makes no sense. Sharpie Guy, hey, today was a spicy one, Rob. Thank you, Sharpie Guy. We love extra spicy here. And then there's Biden. Wow, the government is so corrupt, in my opinion. It's true. I do agree. You do such a great job uncovering the things none of us have the time to do for ourselves. Thank you so much, Rob. Sharpie Guy, man, it's a real treat. It's an honor. It's a privilege. It's a pleasure. I have a great time with you guys. Thank you for the nice comment, Sharpie Guy. You know how much I love validation. Thank you, Sharpie Guy. Texas Knock, what's up? Texan Knock. 7 months as a membo, 2 more to a full baby. The Biden-Her interview was 23. Biden pardons Fauci in 25. If the audio shows Biden's Alzheimer's, then the pardon would be no bueno. Just a thought. You're dead right. Texan Knock. Exactly right. And the Her audio is already out. So we got that, and he sounds terrible. So did he have the capacity to sign that pardon, just like does your grandma who's dying in her deathbed have the capacity to sign away her trust fund? Maybe not. Maybe he can't actually, it's a capacity thing, right? You just actually you can't do it. And if he was gone in 16 and 17 when the Zwanitzer recordings were, then he's been gone for a long time. You know? Thank you, Texan Knock. Hey, Elk Plow. Mr. I am the science needs to change it to I am the prisoner. Yeah, I like that. Yeah, we need to trust the prisons, okay, Fauci. So just go in there. We need to trust the justice system. We need to trust the sentencing judge. What are you, a sentencing judge denier? Don't be a justice denier. So go make your case that you're innocent, and we'll let a jury decide, a jury of Americans. Thank you, Elk Plow, for the dono. Hey, Jim tells you, Jimbo, hey, link on locals of what happened to the reflecting pool. Thank you, Jim. Jim, you're streaming tonight? Amazing. We'll send some folks your way. Yeah, reflecting pool. We'll come back on that very likely tomorrow. Some people were getting irritated that I was talking about all the algae and all the reflecting pool stuff so much. Now it's under national attack. See? That's why it's important. It's national attack. We're under attack by the communist algae insurgents. Spuds, Cuomo was attached at the hip with Fauci. I wonder if he goes down, he will take King 15K dead people, Andy Cuomo, as well. Yeah, Cuomo. Andrew Cuomo, remember him? And what about the other guy, de Blasio, who was stuffing his fat, disgusting face with cheeseburgers and French fries like, hey, poor people, you want to eat? Then you'll go take this jab and I'll give you a hamburger. Clog your arteries up while we clog your arteries up. Thank you, Spuds. A lot of bad people, man. Hey, K-Bean. K-Bean, you're amazing. 52 months. Look how long that is, my friends. K-Bean, thank you for modding the fort down for us and for complimenting the hairdo. He did good. He did pretty good today. I go to this place where I never get the same person to cut the hair. It's pretty amazing, actually. But sometimes they're not so great. So you go in there and there's 3 floors and there's got to be like 20 different Asian people. Like, I'm not even joking you. It's actually kind of hilarious. You go into this building. As soon as you walk in, they just say, 3rd floor, 2nd floor, 2nd corner, 1st floor. And you go in and you just go up. Today I was 3rd floor. So I went up to the 3rd floor and you're right in. You sit right down. There's no wait time at all. But you never know who you're going to get. It's a little bit of a roulette. But I had a very nice old Asian guy today, and he did a great job. So shout out to him. Thank you, K-Bean, for mentioning it. Summertime, extra short. Hey, Tony, hey, could you raid Scott Starboard? Think people here would like him. He's got 17 watching currently. It would totally freak him out. He's on YouTube. He was Alex Stein's mod. That's how I met him. Happy to do that. I think he needs to give us permission. So I can't actually on YouTube for sure. On YouTube, I can't forward to anybody else unless they go in there and I have permission to do that. So Tony, hey, if you want to set that up, happy to do that. Of course, we're sending folks over to Jim Tells You. We love Jim Tells You, but we're also happy to spread the love around from time to time, especially if Jim's not streaming. But we'd be happy to do that. But I think I have to have permission. I just can't send you to, I'm pretty sure that I need to have that. So you go into your settings and you give me permission to do it. Otherwise, it doesn't show up in my redirect feed. So that would be a cool surprise. If he's on Rumble, maybe we could split it. So Tony, hey, if he's on Rumble, also live streaming on Rumble, maybe we could send them over on Rumble. And we could send Jim Tells You Today over on YouTube. But yeah, happy to do that. Of course, we want to support all of our friends out there. So Tony, hey, see if you can set it up. Dan, hey, well, the jab wasn't working. Mask up was the next step. The plan, well, they told us 100% effective, zero transmission. What we meant was 99% effective. Then it was 97. Then it stopped talking about it. Yeah, we remember. Plan was to kill as many as possible to save grandma you couldn't see. Yeah, and you still don't trust the numbers. And, you know, you really don't trust the numbers. Like how many were actually dead from COVID? How many died of other things? They just called COVID to get all the COVID money. The whole thing was a scam, man. Rubos. And they stole years of our lives, literally years. Businesses wrecked, kids' education wrecked. Huge, a whole generation of kids who like can't read and are, you know, a little extra weird because they were home for 2.5 years, 3 years in some places, learning on an iPad, like having their brains fried. Rubos, hey, happy Father's Day to all the fathers in the chat. And to Rob, a happy pre-Father's Day. God bless all our dads, man. Shout out to all the good fathers out there. Happy Father's Day, old chap. Look at that stash, man. I wonder if I could pull that off. How long does that take? Like 20 years? I don't know. It might be worth a try. It looks good. What do you think? We may have to do it. It looks so damn good. Rubos, shout out. And your boy got a Father's Day card from our baby. Alexis gave it to me. Our baby wrote me this beautiful card. And baby's not out yet, but I still got this beautiful card. She wrote me a beautiful card. Our baby, whatever gender it's going to be. And we had an amazing Father's Day adventure yesterday. We had a lot of fun. She set something up. We went and did something fun. So your boy's already celebrating Father's Day. Baby's not even here yet, but I'm already getting cards from this kid. Going to be a great kid. So love you, beautiful wife. My beautiful wife, Alexis, I love you. And thank you, little baby child, for my birthday, my Father's Day present. And happy Father's Day, including to my father, Greg, amazing man. Happy Father's Day, Greg, if you're listening. And it's a beautiful day. Happy shout out to all of our amazing fathers. Crap fathers, though, not you. Miss Kayla, Joe's cognitive test results. Actual results. Yeah, did they tell us anything about that? I don't know. Like Trump gives us the reports, but I'm not sure we've seen so much of Joe Biden's mental analysis, because it would have been a disaster. Hey, what's going on, Rick D? Here's one, some Friday fun from Rick D. Let's see what this one says. How would you argue in court this client didn't match the sketch? Oh my gosh, is this one of these?
Ran away after robbing a store.
Crucial development, Bob. Police have just dispatched a sketch of the...
That can't be real.
Officers have now arrested the suspect moments ago.
It really looks just like...
That can't be real. That can't be real. Is that real? That's hilarious. Remember the leprechaun? Remember the leprechaun drawing? What was that leprechaun arrest? Leprechaun in the hood. Is that the meme? No, leprechaun on the loose. You guys know what I'm talking about? Oh my God, it must be a leprechaun. What was that video? Yes. It reminds me of this story. Let me just confirm this is the one. Leprechaun in Mobile, Alabama. Oh my gosh, this was incredible. Yeah, here, I think this is the real story.
Well, just in time for St. Patrick's Day, crowds are coming by the dozens to get an up-close view at what some say is a piece of Irish folklore.
Some people in the Crichton area of Mobile say a leprechaun is taking up residence in their neighborhood. A leprechaun. NBC 15's Brian Johnson has more.
Curiosity leads to large crowds in Mobile's Crichton community, many of you bringing binoculars, camcorders, even camera phones to take pictures.
To me, it look like a leprechaun to me. All I gotta do is look up in the tree. Who else seen the leprechaun say yeah?
Eyewitnesses say the leprechaun only comes out at night. If you shine a light in its direction, it suddenly disappears. This amateur sketch resembles what many of you say the leprechaun looks like. Others find it hard to believe and have come up with their own theories and explanations for the image.
My theory is it's casting a shadow from the other limb.
Could be a crackhead.
True.
Who got hold to the wrong stuff. And it told him to get up in a tree and play a leprechaun.
We're going to get down to the bottom of this. Yeah, still on there, guy. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid, man.
This guy helping to direct traffic says he's prepared for his encounter with the leprechaun. He's suited up from head to toe.
This wars off spells right here. This is a special leprechaun flute, which has been passed down from thousands of years ago from my great-great-grandfather who was Irish. I just came to help out.
Others just came to get lucky in hopes a pot of gold may be buried under this tree.
I'm gonna run a backhoe and uproot that tree. I want to know where the gold at. I want the gold. Give me the gold. I want the gold.
This is Brian Johnson, NBC 15 News.
People will do anything for a pot of gold. I mean, anything.
You know what I like? I like the amateur sketch of the leprechaun.
Yeah,
it looks like somebody got a really good look at it and got that good drawing of it.
Who did that? I want to know who sketched that.
I don't know. Maybe Brian sketched it.
Yeah, I mean, it's, you know, you never know. Look at this thing. It's pretty damn accurate to me. So hopefully they caught that little critter out there. Yeah. Thank you, Rick. Humble Satellite Boy. The narrative that the 2020 was the most secure election in American history is a microcosm of the last 10 years. The truth was the precise diametrical opposite of that. The widespread use of mail-in ballots alone makes 2020 the least secure election in American history. Yeah, and just like everything else, if they say it is one thing, it's very likely the opposite, which is why they come out so aggressively. Ridiculous. Hey, Donald and Cheryl Lynn Rubos. Hey, this isn't Fauci's first rodeo, by the way. Fauci also obstructed the release of experimental and life-saving medications for HIV and AIDS patients in the 80s. Larry Kramer, a playwright and gay rights activist, wrote something called Village Voice in 1988. He said, "You are responsible for supervising all government-funded AIDS treatment research programs. In the name of right, you make decisions that cost the lives of others. I call that murder." After Kramer's death, Fauci claimed Kramer forgave him, but there's no evidence of that. Cheryl Lynn's brother passed away in 1995 from HIV/AIDS 2 months before life-saving protease inhibitors were released, which Fauci had delayed. Man, I'm sorry about that, Rubos. Cheryl Lynn, we pray for your bro. The loss still hurts. Yeah, this guy's been devastating health for generations, for multiple decades. Maybe that's why they elevated him. Like, oh, this guy did it with AIDS, so here, just do it with COVID. Hey, Jim Tells You. What is this one? This is reflecting pool stuff. Thank you, Jim Tells You. Jim, you're over on Locals? Man, thank you for that. And, oh, we have
a good job. Whoops.
What? Okay, here we go. Let me play this again. Joe Biden did the reflecting pool.
You know, this water looks really nice now. Gotta hand it to Trump. He did a good job. Whoops.
Oh,
well,
Joe.
there goes my ice cream. I'm gonna jump in and get it. I can't leave without my ice cream. Here goes nothing. Shucks, no more ice cream. Oops, I think I went pee-pee.
Oh, Joe did it.
Hopefully no one saw me.
Joe did it. Oh, Joe crapped in the pool. Oh. All right. Well, that answers it. So it was Joe Biden's diaper in the pool. Oh, gosh. It all makes all the sense in the world. Thank you, Jim, for the clarity. Now we know. All right, friends, it has been a beautiful stream. Thank you so much for joining us. Happy Friday. What a lovely day. Appreciate you joining us. Of course, if you're a member, we'll see you tomorrow morning on the members only Saturday stream. Couple of comments on Twitter, X, sorry, Elon, don't ban me. Barb Schaefer, hey, even so, Are crimes against humanity covered by a presidential pardon? COVID was a worldwide deal. Yeah, and I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Like, I'm not sure if there are any notable exceptions to pardons. I feel like we looked that up at one time. Is there an argument that treason is not covered by the pardon? It's a good question, Barb. I have to look into that again. Yeah, hey, B. Torn, everybody forgets the registered voters who signed up by a voter drive got auto-signed by license renewals that never vote. Their data is there to use to cheat in elections. Yeah, you want an overabundance of ballots that are ripe for your taking if you want to exploit them. And shout out to NeuroD for sharing our locals, watching thewatchers.locals.com. We'd love it if you joined us to become a member, support our work here, meet some new people, get more invested in the Watcher fam. We'll come back tomorrow on Saturday. We'll have another great stream if you care to join us. And Bodie, hey, happy Father's Day to be Rob. I have 4 kids and it's the greatest blessing of my life. I'm so happy for you too. We're excited too. Yeah, we're excited, man. It's coming up fast. Like 4 weeks. Yikes. Thank you, Bodie. We're very excited. I'm excited. I know Alexis is excited. And yeah, we want a nice, healthy baby. Thank you, Ken Krause. Praying for a healthy baby. That's healthy baby, healthy mama, and I'll be a happy man. Looking forward to it. Thank you, God. Off-label podcast. Alabama also gives you the classics of hide your kids, hide your wife. That was a great one. As crackheads are coming for you. Hide your kids, hide your wife. That was like an internet meme. That was a good one. And strutting that A, those are classic news laughs. Yeah, hide your kids, hide your wives, because there'd be crackheads everywhere around here. Amazing stuff. Yeah, Tony, hey, no worries. I'll let him know. Kind of ruins the surprise, though. But if anyone wants to check about, it's called Scott Starboard. Love you, brother. Man, thank you, Tony. Hey, you're a real nice dude, man. Thank you for that. We would love to do that. Yeah, give him, kind of like a real nice, exciting thing. That'd be amazing. I don't think they had that really, like when I was coming up. But they'd be like, what if somebody like sent, like, what if, I don't know, like Tim Pool sent a bunch of people. I'd be like, holy crap, that's crazy, right? Because he's got a huge show. But that doesn't happen. But anyways, thank you, Tony. Hey, we'd love to do that if we can. But I'm pretty sure he needs to approve it, which I think is kind of dumb. Like, why do you need to approve that? Just let me send them over. But I'm pretty sure. Anyways, thank you, Tony. Hey, you're the man. Hey, it's the Munkets. Today, we'll send them over to Jim Tells You. Jim, have a great stream as we close out the week. But friends, we'll pause here. Thank you for joining us. It's been a tremendous week together. Thanks for subscribing if you're still out there and haven't already done that. Big thank yous to our amazing mods and meme smiths. We got Muffin Rando. We got John. We got Donut Mind Me. We got Carrie Bean, KB, Neuro D, Janek, and Dog Digger on the Rumbles. We got Geegum Geegum, Elliot, and just Rhonda, keeping things nice and orderly around here. And my friends, thank you for joining us. Thanks for liking the video on the way out, for sharing the show with a friend or family member. We're going to come back next week, and it should be a good one. And so remember, on Tuesday and Thursday next week, we're going to do double headers. We'll do a 10 a.m. and a 5 a.m. unless the 10 a.m.s are like, multi-hours, because we got Supreme Court drops scheduled for Tuesday and Thursday. Yeah, we love Branca too. We're going to meet up with Branca. He's coming out. You guys mentioned to me that he was coming out on for the New Year's weekend. So we've been texting. And so we're going to get to finally meet. I think Nick Rekieta is also coming out. So we've been texting as well. So we may meet up with him. If you know anybody else who's out there, we'd love to connect. So just give me a heads up and I'll just, hey, I hear you're going to be in town. Let's hang out, which is what I've been doing. So let me know. But some good dudes out there. We got some great people on our side. So we got to connect, Got to form a coalition like the Avengers in order to consolidate our strength to beat the libs. But we'll pause here. Thank you for being a part of everything that we do. Thanks for the fun. Thanks for the friendship. Thanks for the frivolities here. We'll pause here on the evening. I hope your rest is outstanding. Hopefully you're unplugging a little bit. recuperating, rejuvenating, restoring, re-energizing, doing something fun, spending time with friends, family, all the people that we love, and then coming back on Monday to get into it again, because we will be back here. And in order to do that appropriately, we are going to need to see you right back here so that together, with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. Make it a beautiful night. Happy weekend. Sleep very well. We'll see you right back here on Monday. Bye-bye.
Thanks for watching, my beautiful friends. Now it's that time where the stream must end. You brought the heat with every chatting line. Together we expose corruption. One more time we dove in the truth where the media hides. Lit up the lies with receipts on all sides. The fight isn't over, but we made them sweat. We ain't done yet, no, not just yet. Because together we are watching the watchers. Truth on our side. Watching the watchers. We won't be denied. Watching the watchers. Eyes open wide. Fighting for freedom with nothing to hide. Drop a like and don't forget to share. And bring a friend who's ready to care. Tomorrow's lies are just today's news, but here we see through the screen.